Chapter 4368 was filled with tears after the messenger of the blizzard hunting group left. Yun Chujo gathered her thoughts together and looked at Yu Lai. Deputy Commander Yu, tell me about this competition. In order to win over the hearts of the people, Yun Chujo accepted Yu Lai as the third deputy commander. This guy was very shrewd. The first deputy commander was Sha Wuhan, the second deputy commander was Tu Ziji, and the third deputy commander was Yu Lai. Although they were both deputy commanders, there was still a difference in strength. Yu Lai was quite satisfied. After all, he was a later generation. Even if he was given a group leader, he would still have to endure it. Especially since the hurricane hunting group no longer existed, he did not have any other thoughts. Hearing Yun Chujo ask him, he hurriedly said, Commander, the three groups compete once a year. This year, it happens to be the blizzard hunting group's turn to be the host. Saying that it was the host was actually just setting things up. There wasn't much else to do. The competition's contents were divided into two categories. One was the elemental energy competition, and the other was the spirit soul competition. The two categories would be ranked after adding up the points. The winning prize was the right to hunt in the Black Fog Mountain Range. Last year's winner was the Blizzard Hunting Squad, so the Black Fog Mountain Range's hunting advice last year was given to the Blizzard Hunting Squad. Yun Chujo was not interested in the hunting rights in the Black Fog Mountain Range. However, if she could obtain the first place in the three group competitions, it would be convenient for her to take over the two hunting groups in the future. Moreover, the elemental energy competition had Tu Ziji and the spirit soul competition had her. There should be no problem for her to obtain first place. Yun Chujo thought and said the same thing. Then, she saw that Yu Lai was a little hesitant to speak. Yun Chujo raised her chin, indicating for him to speak freely. Regiment Commander, it's not a problem to let Deputy Regiment Commander Tu participate in the spiritual power competition. However, it's most likely not suitable for you to participate in this spiritual power competition, Yu Lai said with some difficulty. Oh. What's wrong with my big brick? Why is it not suitable? Yun Chujo asked unwillingly. Although she also despised it, it was one thing to despise it herself, but it was another thing to be despised by others. Leader, you may not know this, but the spirit soul competition is not about strength, but agility. The higher the degree of agility, the higher the spirit soul's intelligence, the greater the growth potential. It is impossible for Earth-grade spirit souls to exist in our lowly domain. The participants are all black-grade spirit souls, so this intelligence is especially important. Yu Lai did not say it too directly, but the meaning was obvious. The flexibility of the big brick could not be compared to the beast spirit and plant spirit, so it would be tormented if it went up. For example, if it was a competition to pick fruits, the beast spirits could use their claws, the plant spirits could use branches or vines. What could the large brick use? Yun Chujo thought about it and felt that it was true, but she could not. There were still others. Thus, she said, then when the time comes, let the other spirit souls compete. No matter what, the first place in the origin energy competition will definitely be ours. Even if the spirit soul competition is the last place, it won't be shameful. Everyone thought to themselves that their regiment commander had a big heart. Very soon, it was the day of the competition. Yun Chujo, this fellow, liked to pay attention to ostentation. Not only did she flutter her banners, but she also beat drums and gongs. She was very smug. Sha Wuhan and the others were all very speechless. They were a hunting regiment, not a troop. Was it really good to be so ostentatious? Then, they looked at their regiment commander Xiao Hong. He was originally ugly and wore a bright red shirt. There was even a little red flower drawn between his brows. That scene was really unbearable to look at. Tu Ziji was puzzled. Logically speaking, this little devil could transform at will. Why didn't he transform into a better-looking image? How would he know that He Xingjiu was forced to transform from a man into a man? It was a tearful scene. Chapter 4369 Thunder Blossom Blizzard Hunting Regiment's Commander Sima and Lightning Hunting Regiment's Commander Luo had never seen Yun Chuzhou in person, so one could imagine the impact they would have upon seeing Yun Chuzhou. The two of them were too shocked, so they only recovered from their shock when Yun Chuzhou sat down. Commander Sima said with a fake smile, "Commander Zhen really lives up to his name, this one has opened my eyes." Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, "Commander Sima, you really have a good eye. I am a flower of our Thunderbolt hunting group." The corner of Commander Sima's mouth twitched. A flower? Go Wei Butsao was more like it. Commander Luo said with a strange tone, "I heard that Commander Zhen has been promoted from a servant to the #1 position of the Thunderbolt hunting group. What a good method. I wonder if he will personally go on stage today to let us open our eyes?" Yun Chuzhou continued to smile as she said, "Let's see. If your two regiments are too weak, I reckon there's no need for me to go on stage." Regimental Commander Sima and Regimental Commander Luo both snorted coldly. What a big tone. However, after the Origin Energy competition started, the expressions of the two people changed. Although the name of that 2ZG from the Thunderbolt hunting regiment was a little strange, his Origin Energy was too strong. Not to mention defeating him, no one could last more than 15 minutes under his hands. Yun Chuzhou ate melon seeds and drank tea. She felt that this 2ZG was really not bad. She reckoned that in the future, he would be able to slaughter everyone in the Ping domain. Regimental Commander Sima probed, "Regimental Commander Zhen, this TUZG of yours is not bad. I wonder where you recruited him from." Yun Chuzhou faintly said, "He came to our door by himself and cried miserably. He insisted on me taking him in as my subordinate. I saw him crying pitifully, so I could only reluctantly accept him." Regimental Commander Sima was so angry that he was twitching. He believed that there was something wrong with her. However, when he thought of the Spirit Soul competition later on, his face became a little proud. His Spirit Soul was a spirit ape, and the spirit ape's flexibility and intelligence were relatively high among the beast spirits. The first place in this Spirit Soul competition was none other than their lightning hunting squad. Regiment Commander Luo saw the flash of pride on Regiment Commander Sima's face and curled his lips. Last year, it was that spirit ape of Regiment Commander Sima's that helped the Blizzard hunting squad obtain first place, but this year, it might not be so. He was injured last year, so he did not participate in the competition. His spirit soul was a spirit vine, and if it was a competition of agility, the spirit vine would be even better than the spirit ape. Commander Luo calculated that the three groups might very well end in a draw. If it was a draw, then it would be a good idea for one family to occupy the hunting rights of the Black Fog Forest for 4 months. However, he had to think of a way to make Zhen Meili make a fool of herself, so as to prevent the Thunder hunting group from being too ostentatious. Commander Luo and Commander Sima exchanged glances. Although the two of them were also sworn enemies, they had the same goal at the moment, therefore, the two of them chimed in, "Commander Zhen, I heard that your spirit is very special. Why don't you go up and let us have a look?" "That's right, Commander Zhen. Since both of us are participating, it's not good to lack you. Go up and show yourself so that everyone can get to know you." Yun Chuzhou naturally knew what the two of them were up to. However, she didn't have any other advantages except that she was thick-skinned. She would go up if she wanted to. Hence, she chuckled. "All right, then I'll go up and have some fun." Sha Wuhan and the others, who were sitting behind Yun Chuzhou, twitched their eyes. "Little Jiu, is your appearance today really that good? Also, is that big brick of yours going up to win the last place?" Chapter 4370 was a little too long. Very quickly, the Spirit Soul competition began. Before that was the preliminaries. Of course, with Yun Chuzhou's status, she naturally did not need to participate in the preliminaries. She just needed to directly participate in the finals. Finally, the finals had arrived. The host was a member of the Blizzard hunting group. After receiving the order from Commander Sima, when it was time to introduce the contestants, he deliberately raised his voice. "Now, let's welcome the Thunder hunting squad's commander Zhen Mei Zhen." Commander Zhen is just like her name, calling herself the Thunder Blossom. Her spirit soul is something that is rarely seen in 1,000 years. Everyone, today is your lucky day. Sha Wuhan and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. This host was obviously sarcastic, mocking Little Nine. The Thunder Hunting Squad's hunters were also a little uncomfortable. Their Little Nine's commander was good in every way, except he looked a little miserable. Moreover, her spirit soul was really not suitable to participate in the spirit soul competition. Wasn't she making herself uncomfortable? If she were to lose face, the Thunderbolt hunting group would also be unable to raise their heads. Yun Chuzhou didn't look uncomfortable at all. She gracefully jumped onto the competition stage. The Blizzard hunting group and the Lightning hunting group below immediately burst into laughter. They were only laughing at Yun Chuzhi's ugly appearance. She actually called her Zhen Meili, and even called her Thunderbolt Flower. It was really hilarious. Some people even claimed that there was no one left in the Lightning hunting squad. The Lightning hunting squad was all trash, so they chose an ugly woman as their leader. Yun Chuzhou had a faint smile on her lips until the discussion became quieter. Only then did she say, "Do you guys think it's funny that I'm called Zhen Meili because I'm so ugly? Do you guys think that I don't deserve to be called Lightning Flower?" Everyone burst into laughter again, thinking that Zhen Meili knew her own limits. Yun Chuzhou waited until her laughter became softer, only then did she continue, "Actually, I also wanted to change my name. For example, I wanted to be called Zhen Ugly, or Zhen Chou. But even if I really called these names, wouldn't you all laugh? You would definitely say, "Io, this person's name and appearance match well, right and wrong?" This time, everyone didn't laugh, but they all curled their lips, feeling that Yun Chuzhou was talking nonsense. First of all, this appearance is natural. I can't help it. This name is just a code name. You guys don't mind if it's Cola. As for the Thunderbolt Flower, I feel that I can still be considered worthy of my name. That's because I'm the only woman in our Thunderbolt hunting team. No matter how beautiful they are, they can only be called Thunderbolt, Yun Chuzhou said with a faint smile. Everyone laughed again. However, this time, they didn't laugh at her. Instead, they felt that what Yun Chuzhou said was interesting. Yun Chuzhou pointed at her clothes again. "Oh right, you must also feel that since I'm so ugly, I shouldn't wear such bright clothes. However, I can't help it. Since I can't be the #1 beauty, it's not bad to be the #1 ugly woman." The crowd burst into laughter again. This Zhen Meili was quite interesting. They had never seen someone so blatantly belittling them. This time, Yun Chuzhou paused for a long time. When the crowd had completely quieted down, she continued, "You all mocked my looks, my name, and my clothes. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm happy to be a laughing stock for everyone." Speaking up to this point, Yun Chuzhi's tone suddenly became fierce. "However, if you say that the members of the Thunderbolt hunting group are all trash and that they are blind to choose me as their leader, then you are all courting death." Chapter 4371, The Big Brick for the competition. The crowd did not expect that Yun Chuzhou, who had been self-deprecating, would suddenly change her attitude. For a moment, they were a little confused, and the scene was dead silent. "You must think that I'm bluffing you, and that I'm scaring you. If anyone dares to slander my subordinates and my brothers in front of me in the future, I'll kill them." Yun Chuzhou said, her eagle-like gaze looked at the crowd below. No one knew whether it was because they were intimidated by Yun Chuzhi's killing intent or because they didn't react in time. In short, no one made a sound. The scene was still deathly silent. At this moment, Yun Chuzhou laughed lightly. "Host, don't tell me you want me to continue hosting for you?" Only then did the host react. However, after being swept by Yun Chuzhi's cold and ruthless gaze, her legs couldn't help but go weak. She stammered, below is the Blizzard Hunting Group's division commander. Division commander's spirit is a soul ape." The host was intimidated by Yun Chuzhi's momentum, the original impassioned introduction stammering, "Almost to death seem a regiment commander." Originally wanted to let that Jin beautiful lose face, but now it is good, instead move a stone to hit his own feet. The host finally finished introducing the contestants and began to announce the rules of the competition. The rules were very simple. There were several tall fruit trees on the stage that were filled with fruits. What the spirit soul had to do was to pluck the fruits from the trees and put them into the basket next to it. Whoever plucked the most fruits would win. After the host announced the start of the competition, Commander Sima's spirit ape nimbly climbed onto the fruit tree and began to pluck the fruits. Commander Luo's spirit vine didn't want to be outdone either. It climbed onto the fruit tree and began to pluck the fruits with the vines. The other spirit souls also displayed their abilities. Only Yun Chujia's big brick flew around the stage like an idiot, as if it was watching a show. The people below the stage discussed, TSK, I told you, Zhen Meili's spirit soul would also lose if she went up. If it was a competition of strength, that thing would probably be okay. This competition of agility and intelligence can't be compared at all. That's right, I've never heard of anyone with a big brick that can pick fruits. That Zhen Meili's mouth is really good, but this spirit soul competition will definitely be in last place. Yun Chuzhou watched calmly. She didn't care about the results of the competition at all. If she lost, so be it. She didn't care about any hunting rights anyway. There were plenty of ways to earn money. Moreover, she felt that the big brick had been a little inflated recently. It would be good to let it learn a lesson so that it wouldn't have to show off all day. Therefore, everyone saw that the other contestants were very nervous. They wished they could go up and help their spirit souls pick fruits. Only Zhen Meili took out a chair and crossed her legs to watch the show. Everyone thought to themselves, not to mention that the big brick was really similar to Zhen Meili. Indeed, the host had the same spirit soul as the host. Half of the time it took for an incense stick to burn quickly passed. The big brick was still proudly watching the show. It didn't have the self-awareness of a contestant at all. Everyone curled their lips. This big brick was most likely a fool, right? Otherwise, it only had shallow intelligence. At this moment, the big brick finally floated back to its own fruit tree. Then, with a bang, it hit the fruit tree, and the fruits on it fell one after another. Then, the big brick began to neatly pick the fruits in the basket. Although the big brick did not have hands, it did not know how it did it. Anyway, the fruits were all put into the basket by it. Chapter 4372. Just as everyone was stunned, they saw the brick knock down the fruit tree of the soul ape next door and stuff the fruit into its basket. Yun Chuzhou facepalmed. Alright, this point seemed to be up to her. She was used to snatching things. Everyone was dumbfounded. Not only was the brick not stupid, it had become a spirit. It had picked up so many fruits from the soul ape, so the first place would definitely belong to it. The expressions of Regiment Commander Sima and Regiment Commander Luo were very ugly. They had originally wanted to make Yun Chuzhou make a fool of herself, but now they had returned the favor and allowed her to pick up the first place. They wanted to find trouble, but the rules did not say that they were not allowed to knock down trees, nor did they say that they were not allowed to snatch fruits from other people's trees. The final result was not surprising, the big brick obtained first place. The Thunder Hunting Group's hunters had changed from their previous dejection, and immediately felt that being a member of the Thunder Hunting Group was awesome. Yun Chuzhou looked at the unsightly expression of Commander Sima and Commander Luo and said, I'm sorry, I originally wanted to come up and join in the fun, but I didn't think that I would accidentally obtain first place. I admit it. The two of them were so angry that they kept snorting. They had really taken advantage of the situation. Without any suspense, the Thunderbolt Hunting Group obtained the first place in the overall score and obtained the hunting rights of the Black Fog Forest for a year. Yun Chuzhou brought her men and returned in triumph. She had participated in this competition mainly to test the strength of the other two groups. She discovered that the strength of the two hunting groups was slightly weaker than that of the Thunderbolt Hunting Group. Hei Xinzhou decided to increase the strength of the Thunderbolt Hunting Group as soon as possible and take down the two hunting groups within a short period of time. Therefore, the Thunderbolt hunting group members found that the food tasted a little strange recently. It was also possible that there was a problem with the ingredients. Otherwise, why would their stomachs always go bad? However, they also found that the speed of their cultivation had suddenly become faster. What was going on? A month later, the Thunderbolt hunting squad began to take over. Due to Yun Chujo, this pervert, and 2ZG, this lethal weapon. The Thunderbolt hunting squad used 2 months to take over the Blizzard hunting squad and the Lightning hunting squad. Because she had absolute authority, Yun Chujo began to reorganize the base region. If there were no laws, then they would establish laws. If there were no law enforcement squads, then they would establish law enforcement squads. After some drastic measures, the base domain gradually developed in a stable direction. From 2ZG's point of view, other than having a thin yuan qi and everyone's yuan qi levels being low, the base domain was even more orderly than the flat domain. It was on par with the imperial domain. In the beginning, he had been forced to follow Yun Chujo because he was helpless. But now, he had a sense of agreement with Yun Chujo. This little girl not only had a perverse physique, but her brain was not something an ordinary person could compare to. Yun Chujo was somewhat worried. Although she was a person of her word in the base domain, how could she gain a foothold in the flat domain? After thinking about it, she decided to bring a few people to explore the flat domain. After gaining a foothold, she would think of a way to bring all the elites of the Thunderbolt Hunter Regiment into the flat domain, and then dominate the flat domain. Then the question came, who should she bring? Yun Chujo gathered a few of her trusted aides together for a discussion. The short fatty grinned and said, "Little Joe, it's quite good to stay in the scum domain. Don't get carried away. Although you're considered an expert in the scum domain, you're just a small piece of trash in the even domain." The third brother also echoed, "Second brother's words make sense. Little Joe, you'd better not take the risk." Sha Wuhan was silent for a long while before saying, "Little Joe, in the long run, it's not a bad thing for you to go to the even domain, but the risk is too great. You have to consider it carefully." Chapter 4373 summons the second spirit. Yun Chujo waited for everyone to finish speaking before she spoke. If a person doesn't have any worries, there will definitely be immediate worries. Although we seem to be in a glorious situation now, if the people of the Ping domain or the Imperial domain cause trouble, we will definitely suffer a disaster. Therefore, I will definitely go to the Ping domain. However, I cannot go alone. It is difficult for a lone tree to support itself. I plan to bring a few people over. Which one of you wants to go with me? The short fatty immediately shrank back. He did not know why, but he felt that the person Yun Chujo wanted to take away was him. He did not want to go. How good would it be to have food and drink in the lowly domain? He would not go to the even domain to suffer. Just as the short fatty was thinking, he heard Yun Chujo say, "Big brother wants to stay behind to oversee things. Naturally, he cannot go. Third brother's elemental energy level is a little low. Moreover, he cannot go even if he wants to stay behind to assist big brother. Thus, second brother, you and big brother too can go with me." The short fatty was simply about to cry. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have cultivated with all his might. After he returned, he obtained the jade slip that Yun Chujo gave him. He didn't know if it was because he had experienced life and death in the cave of 1,000 ghosts previously, but his cultivation speed was extremely fast. Now, he had already reached the 5th level of Yuanhua realm. The short fatty knew that the matter that Yun Chujo had decided on couldn't be changed by others, so he could only sob as he returned to pack his luggage. Yun Chujo couldn't help but laugh. The reason why she brought the short and fat man with her was that although he was lazy, his aptitude was better than Sha Yuan's, so his cultivation speed would definitely not be slow when he went to the even zone. Moreover, if it was just her and 2ZG, they wouldn't have enough manpower. If something happened, there wouldn't even be a messenger. When Dog 2 heard that Yun Chujo was going to the even zone, its dog eyes flashed. It had been in a bad mood recently. It used to like those drifters, and both parties were having a good time. However, the big brick had been too cocky recently. It was too hateful. Yun Chujo used to hate those drifters, but now the drifters had turned into big bricks. They even stole the limelight in the three-group competition, taking away its position as the #1 spirit pet. What made it most depressed was that it couldn't beat those drifters before, and it still couldn't beat big bricks now. It felt that this ancient fierce beast of its was just a useless snack. Big bricks, on the other hand, was proud. It felt that the sky was blue and the clouds were white. Its life was too beautiful. When Buttface thought of how big bricks looked like, it was so angry. It decided to give them more trouble. Therefore, after returning to the wooden house, Buttface said to Yun Chujo, "Little fairy, you are going to the Ping domain now. You need more life-saving methods. You are now at the 5th level of Yuanhua realm. You can summon a second spirit soul now. Do you want to try?" Yun Chujo felt that she had nothing to do, so she decided to give it a try. Originally, Yun Chujo had planned to quietly give it a try. Who would have thought that the short and fat man would come over to ask about the time of departure the next day? She immediately shouted that she wanted to give it a try. Yun Chujo could only let him get the incense table and other items, and then she was dragged to kneel again. The short and fat man bit his finger and muttered something, but after a long while, he didn't summon anything. He was quite big-hearted, and said with a grin, "Forget it, I'll try it again in a few days. Anyway, this soul bear of mine is not bad. Little Joe, you try it out." Yun Chujo nodded. She felt that it would be difficult for her to summon a second spirit soul. After all, the first spirit soul was not justified. Yun Chujo followed the procedure. After kowtowing 3 times and 9 times, she bit her index finger in pain. "With my body, I worship the ghost ancestor. With my blood, I summon the spirit soul. Rise." Chapter 4374, The Second Spirit Soul. It didn't exist. Everyone stared at the top of Yun Chuji's head, and a big brick appeared. The short fatty stretched his neck and shouted, "Little Joe, why did you summon the big brick again?" "Summon the second spirit soul." Yun Chujo looked up at the big brick above her head and thought, "Summon my ass. This is probably the only thing I have left in my life." However, she realized that although the brick was still the same brick, its color was a little redder than before. The big brick trembled in the air and deliberately flew in front of Buttface to bump into it. Buttface was so angry. He thought that he could add some trouble to the big brick, but he didn't expect that he could summon these damn drifters. She was so angry. This fellow could not wait for Yun Chujo to quickly get the blazing red glazed tile and return to the nameless sword sect. He had enough time in this broken ghost realm. As Yun Chujo was mentally prepared, she was not too disappointed. She exchanged a few words with the group and returned to her room to rest. The next morning, the 3 of them left the Chiyin mountain range and went to the border of the Ping domain to apply for a commoner. Hei Shinjo gave the person who applied 100,000 low-grade yuan coins. The application, which was supposed to take 3 days, was approved in the time it took for a meal. Therefore, the 3 of them took the newly obtained identity documents and entered the Ping domain. Although Yun Chujo had been cultivating at the border of the Chiyin mountain range, she still sighed inwardly after entering the hinterland of the Ping domain. No wonder many people wanted to enter the Ping domain. The yuan qi here was indeed much denser than in the base domain. When the short fatty saw that the yuan qi in the Ping domain was so dense, he immediately threw the little grievance to the back of his mind. He felt that it was quite good to come to the Ping domain. After all, he still had the ghost talisman in his hands. What was there to be afraid of? The 3 of them entered a town. The pedestrians on the street looked at the 3 of them with some disdain. The reason was very simple. The 3 of them basically had the lowest level of yuan power. Yun Chujo and the short fatty were both at the 5th level of the origin transformation realm. 2ZG had a ring that concealed his origin energy, so his current level of origin energy seemed to be only at the 5th level of the origin transformation realm. The short fatty did not have the time to pay attention to these things. Even if they were in a small town, it was still much more prosperous than the cities in the base region. The short fatty's small eyes instantly lit up. The flat region was still the best. Yun Chujo had seen a city that was several times more prosperous than this one, so she did not have much of a reaction. Tu Ziji, on the other hand, was from the imperial region, so he was also indifferent. However, a notice that was pasted on the wall attracted Yun Chuji's attention. The general content of the notice was that Princess Mei Yan was going to marry her husband in 3 months. The Divine Dragon hunting group in the flat region had recruited 500 hunters to go to the Ghost Abyss to collect the rippling flower for the wedding. All the hunters who successfully collected the rippling flowers would not only receive a generous reward, but they would also be accepted by the Divine Dragon hunting group as an exception. Yun Chujo watched as she listened to the discussions of the crowd, and she had a rough understanding of the situation. The rippling flowers were not only gorgeous in color, but it also implied that the couple was harmonious, with hundreds of children and thousands of grandchildren. It was just that the environment was too harsh, and there were also powerful guardian origin beasts, so it was difficult to find a flower. In order to curry favor with Princess Mei Yan, the Dragon God hunting group's Captain Murong recruited hunters to go to the Ghost Abyss to pick the rippling flower. In any case, the people recruited were all willing to go, so they couldn't blame others even if they died. Little Nine, what's there to see? Don't tell me you want to go to the Ghost Abyss to collect the rippling flower. What's the difference between that and throwing your life away? Anyway, go whoever you want to go, I definitely won't go. The short fatty said snappily. He had a bad premonition in his heart. Every time Little Nine tricked him, he would have this feeling. Oh God, I hope Little Nine doesn't go crazy. Chapter 43-75 Princess Mei Yan's prince consort Yun Chujo looked at the short and fat man with a faint smile. The short and fat man's heart immediately sank. It was over. He had fallen ill again. The three of them left the crowd and found an inn to temporarily settle down. Second brother, big brother too, let's set off to Yen City tomorrow morning to register. Let's go to Ghost Abyss for a stroll. Yun Chujo said with a smile. The short fatty was about to cry. Little Joe, you said to come to the level domain. Fine, well come. But, can we not go to Ghost Abyss to die? If you want to join the Divine Dragon hunting group, can we think of another way? Yun Chujo said with a light smile, another way. Can other ways be as fast as this? According to our elemental energy level, wanting to enter the Divine Dragon hunting group in a short period of time is simply a pipe dream. Furthermore, can other methods obtain a large number of helpers? Second brother, although cherishing life is a good thing, the path of cultivation is to fight with the heavens. If you have to fight, you still have to fight. Moreover, Big Brother 2 and I are here, what are you afraid of? The short fatty was embarrassed by what was said and stammered, I'm just saying, right? I didn't say that I won't go. It's just that Little Joe, second brother, why can't you understand what you mean? It's easy to understand that you have the opportunity to join the Divine Dragon hunting group during this recruitment. What do you mean by the helper you mentioned later? Yun Chujo smiled slyly. There are only two kinds of people who are recruited to go to the abyss to collect ripple flowers. One kind of people wants to join the Divine Dragon hunting group urgently, and the other kind of people are forced by life to go for rich rewards. These two types of people have weaknesses that they can control, and their elemental energy shouldn't be too bad. We can take advantage of the opportunity to go to the abyss to subdue them. After joining the Divine Dragon hunting group, they will be a great help. The short fatty and Tu Ziji were dumbstruck when they heard this. Little Joe's brain wasn't a human's, so why didn't they think of this? After a while, the short fatty said weakly, Little Joe, although what you said makes sense, with just the three of us punks, let alone subdue those people, it's hard to say if we can even keep our little lives. Yun Chujo smiled but didn't say anything. The short and fat man didn't know about her abnormal physique or Tu Ziji's true strength, so it was normal for him to be worried. However, she didn't intend to tell him the truth, because his performance was just used to confuse others. Yun Chujio ignored the short and fat man and asked Tu Ziji curiously, "Big brother Tu, do you know who Princess Mei Yan's consort is?" Princess Mei Yan's son-in-law has a special identity. He is the crown prince of the Yan clan. His marriage to Princess Mei Yan is also a marriage alliance between the two clans. I think the Yan clan and the Ghost clan will communicate more frequently in the future. The crown prince of the Yan clan. Yun Chujio was stunned. What is the name of the crown prince of the Yan clan? I think his name is Aog. I think it's this name. I don't know the details. I heard it from others. Tu Ziji said uncertainly. Yun Chujio was stunned. Aog. He actually came to the Ghost clan. And he married the Ghost clan's Princess Mei Yan. He really didn't stop. What kind of bad idea was this? However, she thought about it. She had already transformed into Zhen Meili's honorable appearance. Aog probably couldn't recognize her. If there was a chance, he would investigate it carefully. For now, it was more important to settle the flat area. The three of them had already made their decision. The next morning, they left the inn and headed to Yen City, where the Divine Dragon Hunting Group was located, to register. Yen City was one of the largest cities in Hirano region. It was very prosperous. When the three of them arrived at the registration location, they couldn't help but feel a little dumbfounded. Chapter 4376, You won't have any friends like this. The registration area was filled with people. If it wasn't for the fact that there were a few registration points, the line at the end of the line would probably stretch all the way out of the city. Yun Chujio was stunned at first, then she understood. Although the Ghost Abyss was dangerous, the Divine Dragon Hunting Group was facing the recruitment of the entire Pingqing region, so naturally, there would be quite a number of people who came to register. Then the problem came. So many people had signed up, and the three of them were weak chickens. What if they couldn't be chosen? Yun Chujio couldn't help but frown. Recently, things had been going smoothly, and she had taken it for granted. The short fatty was very happy. It would be good if they couldn't be chosen. Although little Gio said everything, Ghost Abyss was so dangerous, so it was better not to go. The three of them queued for almost 2 hours, and finally, it was their turn. The hunter in charge of the registration looked at the three of them with disdain when he saw their elemental energy levels, but he still let the three of them fill in the registration form. He curled his lips and said, "Remember to go to the Zhuori forest outside the city to participate in the selection 3 days later, but I reckon that you guys will have gone there for nothing." Yun Chujio's gaze flickered slightly. Gone for nothing? She was definitely going to Gue Yuan. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Soon, it was the day of the selection. When the three of them arrived at the Zhuori forest, many people had already gathered to participate in the selection. Yun Chujio estimated that there were at least 5,000 people. When it was time, the person in charge of the assessment came out and explained the selection rules. The rules were very simple and crude. Everyone entered the Zhuori forest to hunt level 19 origin beasts. The top 500 who used the shortest time would be accepted, while the rest would be eliminated. After that person announced the start of the competition, everyone scrambled to enter the cleansing sun forest. The short fatty said with some schadenfreude, "Little Gio, I told you we wouldn't be able to make it, right? A level 19 origin beast is equivalent to a first-level Yuanzuan realm. We are all small dregs at the 5th level of Yuanhua realm. Even if the three of us work together, we wouldn't be able to kill one, so let's not go in." Yun Chujio ignored him and quickly rushed into the Zhuori forest with Tu Ziji. When the short fatty saw this, he could only follow. He thought to himself, little Gio really didn't shed tears until she saw the coffin. That was a level 19 origin beast. When some of the other participants saw the three of them, their faces were filled with disdain. Most of them were around the 9th level of Yuanhua realm, and the weakest was at the 8th level of Yuanhua realm. Were these three dregs at the 5th level of Yuanhua realm here to be funny? However, now that time was precious, no one wasted their time mocking and ridiculing Yun Chuzhou and the other two. Zhuori Forest was very big. Even though more than 5,000 people had swarmed in, when they reached the depths of the forest, they still scattered. Yun Chuzhou and the other two were quite lucky. Very soon, they encountered a level 19 earth-shattering ghost tiger. The first reaction of the short fatty was to run quickly. However, while he was in a daze, Yun Chuzhou had already rushed forward with a huge brick. The short fatty wanted to cry but had no tears. Little Zhou, that was a level 19 origin beast. Are you crazy or stupid? That earth-shattering ghost tiger could kill you with a single claw. The earth-shattering ghost tiger looked at He Xinjiu, who was carrying a huge brick, and was also a little confused. What the hell was that ugly freak holding in his hand? Large brick? A 5th level origin realm trash still dared to dream of provoking it. It was really courting death. The earth-shattering ghost tiger revealed a thick look of disdain. Just as it was about to raise its claws to slap that ugly monster that overestimated itself away, it saw that ugly monster suddenly stop in its tracks and turn around to run. It even shouted, "Big brother 2, I'll leave it to you. 2 ZG, do you know that you won't have any friends like this?" Chapter 4377 succeeded in one small step. 2 ZG had no choice but to make his move. His elemental energy level was more than enough to deal with a level 19 origin beast. In the blink of an eye, that earth-shattering ghost tiger was killed. The short fatty was dumbstruck. Wasn't this 2 ZG at the 5th level of the origin transformation realm just like him? Why did he look so awesome? With 2 ZG as their killer weapon, the three of them had already killed 3 level 19 origin beasts in less than an hour. However, in order to not attract too much attention, they did not leave immediately. Instead, they estimated that they would be ranked in the middle. Only then did they leave the sun-bathing forest. When the person in charge of the assessment saw that the three of them had actually come out so quickly, he looked at the three of them with astonishment. However, he did not say anything. The people who participated in the selection came out one after another. Most of them had cooperated to complete the kill. After all, one person really could not kill a level 19 origin beast on his own. After the 500 people were selected, the person in charge of the assessment directly brought them to the headquarters of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group. An old man kissed them, saying nothing more than encouraging words. Then, he gave each of them a set of equipment, which contained a set of winter clothing and a few bottles of pills. Everyone felt that the Divine Dragon Hunting Group was indeed one of the two big hunting groups in the flat field. They were indeed generous. In the end, the old man also led the team to Ghost Abyss, and he even brought dozens of hunters. Yun Chuzhou secretly sized up the old man called Elder Zhou and then glanced at the dozens of hunters. For some reason, she felt that this posture was somewhat similar to going to the cave of 1,000 ghosts. However, she felt that she might have thought too much. The rippling flower really existed, and it was indeed only found in the Ghost Abyss. Princess Mei Yan was indeed going to get married, so there should be no problem. The Divine Dragon Hunting Group also prepared horses for everyone, and they set off for the Ghost Abyss in an imposing manner. On the way, Yun Chuzhou and the other two were often ridiculed by others. It was just that the three of them were there to make up the numbers. They were selected because of dog shit and luck. The short fatty and 2 ZG were somewhat uncomfortable. He Xinjiu said with a smile, "You are right. We were the ones who picked up the 3 origin beasts. We were just lucky. Don't you think it's infuriating?" Those people did not expect Yun Chuzhou to be so thick-skinned. Someone sneered and said, "Infuriating? When you reach the Ghost Abyss, you will become dead. You are simply overestimating yourselves." That's right. You 3 good-for-nothings are simply courting death by going to the Ghost Abyss. Not to mention other things, just the coldine energy in the Ghost Abyss can freeze you half to death. The coldine energy is still manageable. The Ripple Flower's guardian origin beast, the armored ghost crocodile, is the most ferocious. They are just going to die. The short and fat man was so angry that he was puffing up. When night fell, he muttered, "Little Joe, you are still talking about subduing those people. They don't even look at us. How are you going to subdue them?" "Second brother, no matter what, we are now the focal point of these people. This can be considered a small step of success," Yun Chujo said with a smile. The short and fat man was so angry that he rolled his eyes. He was being chased and scolded as trash, and he even succeeded in a small step. It should be a small step closer to death. Yun Chujo was teasing the short and fat man while pondering. She had privately asked Tu Ziji if that elder Zhou of hers was a member of the royal hunting group. Tu Ziji was not sure. After all, he was just a small piece of trash in the royal hunting group. She did not know many people. Chapter 4378, Rippling Flower. Yun Chujo also paid attention to Elder Zhou and the hunters of the Divine Dragon hunting group along the way. She didn't find anything wrong, but she was still a little suspicious. If the Divine Dragon hunting group didn't want to lose anything by picking the rippling flower, then they shouldn't have sent dozens of hunters. Wasn't this an unnecessary move? This fellow thought about it again. Even if it was a conspiracy, it was still good. In any case, not letting the enemy's conspiracy succeed was considered a victory. On this day, everyone finally reached the top of the Ghost Abyss. Just standing above the Ghost Abyss, they could feel the cold air coming from below. Everyone hurriedly changed into the warm clothes that the Divine Dragon hunting squad had prepared for them. Elder Zhou had someone hang down the rope, and everyone climbed along the rope to the bottom of the abyss. It was still fine if Tu Ziji's origin energy was superb, but Yun Chujo, this pervert, could even transform into ice, so she naturally didn't feel any discomfort. Only the short and fat man shivered from the cold. Even though he was wearing special clothes to keep out the cold, he still felt very cold. When he saw that Yun Chujo and Tu Ziji's expressions were normal, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. It was really strange. They were both at the 5th level of Yuanhua realm, why weren't they cold? After everyone had descended into the abyss, Elder Zhou sent a few people to stay on top and also climb down along the rope. Under the lead of those hunters, everyone advanced into the depths of the abyss. The deeper they went, the stronger the wind became, and the colder the air became. The short and fat man was so cold that he almost turned into a sieve. Yun Chujo threw him a few overcoats. This guy wrapped himself up like a ball, which made him feel better. The short and fat man's comical appearance naturally provoked many people's ridicule. It was nothing more than asking for trouble and overestimating himself. The short and fat man was also numb now. He said whatever he wanted to say as long as he kept his life. In order to not arouse the suspicion of others, Yun Chujo and Tu Ziji also put on cloaks. On the way, they encountered some origin beasts. Because they had the advantage in numbers, they did not encounter any obstacles. However, Yun Chujo and the other two did not make a move, which made everyone dislike them more and more. They felt that these three were just making up the numbers. After walking for a day and a night, Yun Chujo finally saw the legendary Ripple Flower. The Ripple Flower was in the middle of the swamp, but it was incomparably beautiful. Moreover, it was a twinned flower, and it was indeed suitable for a wedding. However, in the swamp where the Ripple Flower was located, huge iron-armored ghost crocodiles could be seen from time to time. Although the iron-armored ghost crocodiles were only level 20 origin beasts, in the swamp, they were the kings. Wanting to pick the Ripple Flower under their noses was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Since it was night when they arrived, Elder Zhou did not let them move. Instead, he camped at the edge of the swamp and waited until the next day before moving. The short and fat man shivered as he moved closer to Yun Chujo. "Little Joe, don't be stupid and rush forward tomorrow. That iron-armored ghost crocodile is really too scary." Yun Chujo nodded and consoled him kindly. "Second brother, don't worry. I will definitely follow behind you. If you want to rush forward, you will be the one rushing ahead." The short fatty, Tu Ziji watched the two bickering with envy. Although Yun Chujo called him Big Brother Tu now, he knew that it was completely different from how she called the short fatty, second brother. Soon, apart from a few people who were in charge of keeping watch, the rest fell asleep. Yun Chujo could not fall asleep. It was not that she was not sleepy, but Go Weiba kept screaming in her spiritual sense. It wanted to eat flowers, it wanted to eat flowers. Chapter 4379 The wonderful use of the big brick. Yun Chujo would only grant Go Weiba a wish if she was crazy. Not to mention the iron-armored ghost crocodiles in the swamp, the hunters of the divine dragon hunting group alone would not allow her to destroy the flowers. Yes, nibbling on the flowers. Yun Chujo finally suppressed Go Weiba clamoring and fell asleep in a daze. The next morning, after everyone had a simple breakfast, Elder Zhou began to assign tasks. 500 people were divided into 10 groups. 5 groups were responsible for attracting the attention of the armored ghost crocodile, while the other 5 groups were responsible for picking the rippling flowers. Yun Chujo and the other 2 were assigned to the second group. Therefore, the short fatty and Tu Ziji looked at Yun Chujo with a dumbfounded expression as she swallowed her saliva and picked the rippling flowers. They had no idea how miserable He Xinjiu was. Although the Guai Chao could no longer control her body, its gluttonous emotions could still affect her. If it were not for He Xinjia's strong will, she would have already eaten the flower. Although the 5 groups of people who were in charge of picking the flower were less risky than the other people who were in charge of attracting the armored ghost crocodiles, there were also some hidden armored ghost crocodiles under the swamp. Therefore, danger lurked everywhere. The iron-armored ghost crocodiles did not need to attack them directly. They only needed to bite the specially made sampan under their feet to break it, and their lives would be in danger. After all, if they were to fall into the swamp, it would be the iron-armored ghost crocodile's world. What she was afraid of came true. He Xinjiu was swallowing her saliva. Her feet trembled, and her heart suddenly sank. This was not good. The short and fat man looked down and saw that the sampan where the 3 people were was already cracked. The guy cried out, "It's over, I'm going to die." Tu Ziji's brows were tightly knitted. He could have carried the short fatty and Yun Chujo and directly jumped onto the shore. However, this way, his strength would also be exposed. However, if it really couldn't be done, he could only do this. He couldn't just wait for death. At this moment, Yun Chujo had an idea. She released the large brick and directly placed it under the sampan. This way, it was equivalent to adding a layer of protection to the sampan. It was enough to support them to paddle to the shore to exchange for a sampan. When the people on the shore saw Yun Chuji's actions, their faces stiffened. How could a spirit soul be used like this? Yun Chujo and the other 2 paddled to the shore. Just as they were about to change to another sampan to continue picking the rippling flowers, Elder Zhou said, "Summon your spirit soul again. Let me take a look." Yun Chuji's heart skipped a beat. Could this Elder Zhou have seen through something? However, she couldn't refuse, so she let out the big brick. The big brick was also obedient. Not only did the color on its body become much lighter, but it also looked like it was in a daze. It didn't have the spirit of any other spirit. Elder Zhou took a closer look. He saw that the big brick only had a special color. There didn't seem to be anything special about it, so he wasn't interested. He waved his hand to signal for the 3 of them to continue picking the rippling flowers. Yun Chujo heaved a sigh of relief, but in her heart, she planned to be more cautious in the future. The process of picking the rippling flowers was much smoother than expected. They would be able to return in 3 days at most. Yun Chujo thought, could it really just be a simple picking of the rippling flowers? In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Everyone had picked enough rippling flowers. Although dozens of people had died or been injured, it was already very good. Everyone originally thought that they could leave, but they did not expect Elder Zhou to order them to continue moving into the depths of the abyss. Someone raised a question in confusion. Elder Zhou smiled and said, to be honest, apart from picking ripple flowers, our mission this time is to go to the prison of legacy. Chapter 4380 Inheritance Prison. As soon as Elder Zoe's words fell, everyone immediately burst into a clamor. Inheritance Prison. Heavens, we actually have the fortune to enter the Inheritance Prison? Isn't that an existence that only exists in legends? Am I dreaming? Yeah, I've also heard people say that there are many people who suddenly appeared out of nowhere because they obtained inheritances or treasures in the Inheritance Prison. We actually have the fortune to go there. This is simply too great. The Divine Dragon Hunting Group really lives up to its reputation. They actually know about such a secret place. Moreover, they even let us borrow some of their strength. This is really too grateful. That's right. The Divine Dragon Hunting Group is one of the 2 great hunting groups of our Pingqing region. Naturally, they are generous in their actions. I think they are much stronger than the Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group. Yun Chuzhou sneered in her heart. A bunch of idiots. If it was really that good, why would it be your turn? The short fatty beside her also had a pale face. Because this fellow recalled the incident at the Cave of 1,000 Ghosts, he immediately felt his scalp go numb. Of course, some of the people who were recruited also felt that something was not right. However, they could not leave even if they wanted to. Not to mention Elder Zoe and the people from the Divine Dragon Hunting Squad did not allow them to leave. The main reason was that they couldn't leave even if they wanted to without the rope hanging from it. Elder Zoe swept a glance at everyone. He said with a smile, "There are countless inheritances and treasures in the Inheritance Prison. It's up to fate to enter. What you get is yours. In any case, we will all be brothers in the hunting group in the future. It will be beneficial to the entire hunting group if you increase your strength." Elder Zoe's words made some people let down their guard. It made sense. They would also be members of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group in the future, so it was normal for them to get some benefits. Yun Chuzhou felt that this Elder Zoe was obviously better at bewitching people than the previous Elder Tan. However, she did not know what his purpose was. Could it be another blood sacrifice? However, this fellow felt that this was an opportunity. She was worried that she had no way to win the hearts of the people. If these people were trapped by Elder Zoe, she would think of a way to save these people. Then, it would be a matter of time. The further they went in, the colder the temperature became. Fortunately, there were some dry plants on the ground. After walking for a while, they lit a bonfire to keep warm. Then, they continued to walk forward. Just like that, they walked and stopped. Finally, they reached the end of the abyss. A pitch-black stone wall blocked their way. However, when they saw the densely packed vampire bats on the stone wall, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Normally, bats were nocturnal. However, these vampire bats were obviously not one of them. Even though it was broad daylight, the vampire bats were also staring at everyone with their scarlet eyes. Perhaps they were still assessing everyone's strength, so they did not attack rashly. However, it was very obvious that they would definitely attack soon. Yun Chuzhou thought that these vampire bats were probably guarding the Inheritance Prison behind the stone wall. It was obvious that these things were not easy to deal with. She whispered to the trembling short fatty beside her, "If there is a fight later, you should hide under the cloak. Do you understand?" The short fatty's eyes instantly lit up. He had a total of 8 cloaks on him. Even if the vampire bats had sharp mouths, it would be very difficult to pierce through them. Little Jill was still the smart one. The short fatty could still be considered to have a conscience, so he asked, "Little Jill, then what do you do?" The corner of Yun Chujia's mouth revealed a faint smile. "I play with them. I like these cute little things the most." The short fatty, it was over. Little Joe's madness was acting up again. Chapter 4381, The Effect of the Ripple Flower. At this moment, those vampire bats suddenly attacked and rushed towards everyone. Their sharp long teeth flickered with a faint blue light. It was obvious that there was poison on them. Boss Zhou shouted, "Everyone, spread out. These vampire bats are poisonous. Everyone, try your best to attack with your spirit souls. Don't be bitten by them." When everyone heard that, they quickly spread out. Yun Chuzhou and the other two were naturally together. Moreover, the angle that Yun Chuzhou chose just happened to avoid the sight of Boss Zhou. When the short and fat man thought of Yun Chuzhou's previous warning, he directly hid under the cloak like a ball. When Tu Ziji saw it, he could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He really did not understand why Yun Chuzhou had to bring this short and fat man who was afraid of death. Was it just for fun? However, he did not have time to think too much, because two vampire bats had already charged towards him and Yun Chuzhou. It was probably because of the ban on flying, so those vampire bats did not fly high. They were only about 10 feet above the ground, and their attack method was the poisonous fangs on their mouths. Tu Ziji's spirit soul was a soul eagle, so it was suitable to deal with these vampire bats. The huge wings of the soul eagle were just enough to block the vampire bats that swooped down. In addition to Tu Ziji's superb elemental energy, it would not be a problem to deal with even 5 vampire bats, let alone 1. On the other side, He Xingjiu released a large brick, and a vampire bat bit at the large brick. Crack! The vampire bat's sharp teeth were broken. Before it could react, the large brick flashed with red light, and with a clang, it smashed the vampire bat onto the ground. Yun Chuzhou killed the vampire bat with her sword. The big brick trembled. Yun Chuzhou pursed her lips. No wonder Butt-Face had been complaining to her recently. The big brick was getting more and more arrogant. However, this guy felt that the big brick looked familiar. Who did it look like? Butt-Face, who was in the Origin Beast bag, thought to himself, who does it look like? Isn't it just like you? He also wanted to show off, but unfortunately, he was bullied by the dogs. Damn big brick. Yun Chuzhou and Tu Ziji took their time to kill the vampire bats that were charging at them. The short and fat man was suffocating under the cloak, so he had no choice but to come out and fight with a bitter face. Although he was not strong, Tu Ziji and Yun Chuzhou helped him a little, so he was not in danger. The battle lasted for 4 hours before the vampire bats dispersed. However, dozens of people were seriously injured or lost their lives. Elder Zhou glanced at those who were seriously injured. A trace of disgust flashed in his eyes, but he said, "We are all brothers. We can't leave anyone behind. Help the seriously injured people and we will enter the inheritance prison together." Elder Zhou's words naturally won the favor of many people. Only a few people were still on guard. Those vampire bats flew to God knows where. In short, there was nothing on the black stone wall. Elder Zhou took out several rippling flowers and crushed them. Then, he ordered someone to smear the juice of the rippling flowers on the stone wall. Yun Chuzhou stared with her eyes wide open. Oh my, there's such a method. No wonder he went to pick the rippling flowers first. Moreover, he picked so many of them. It was probably just a pretense to offer them to Princess Mei Yan, but the real purpose was to smear the stone wall. He even knew such a subtle method. This Elder Zhou was most likely a member of the royal hunting group. Chapter 4382 Blood-Red Skeleton. After a moment, the rippling flower's blood-red juice had already smeared a large area of the cliff wall. An arched door had appeared on the cliff wall. Old Zhou's eyes lit up, and he immediately signaled for his subordinates to stop. He walked to the front of the door and observed it for a moment before taking out a jade token. After injecting elemental energy into it, creaking sounds came from the stone wall. The stone door opened. Everyone was extremely excited, and joy appeared on Elder Zhou's face. He gave a signal with his eyes, and his subordinates quietly allowed those people who had been recruited to enter first. Yun Chuzhou curled her lips. As expected, they were sent to scout the way. Just as this fellow was cursing in his heart, several exclamations came from inside. However, these exclamations weren't because of fear, but because of surprise. Yun Chujo walked in and took a look. She was also stunned. From the outside, the arched door did not look very big. However, she did not expect that there was another world inside. It was surprisingly spacious. This was not a big deal. What made everyone exclaim was that there was another door inside. There were 3 large blood-red words on it, Prison of Inheritance. Yun Chujo was stunned. Oh, it was really the Prison of Inheritance? Was it not a trap? But Face, do you know the Prison of Inheritance? Yun Chujo used her spiritual sense to ask But Face, who was in the origin beast bag. Little fairy, I have heard of this before. There are a total of 18 floors in the Prison of Inheritance. Each floor has countless floating skulls. There might be rich rewards inside, or there might be hidden killing intent. It depends on one's luck. However, if you want to enter the next level, you have to choose at least 10 skulls. Moreover, the entrance is only in and not out. The exit is set at the 18th level. Dog 2 finally had a chance to suppress the large brick, so it naturally showed off. When Yun Chujo heard this, she immediately understood why Elder Zo had recruited so many people. If the first level required 10 skulls, then the 18th level would have 180 people. If these people were to choose the skulls, they would die. However, if they obtained good items, they would definitely fall into Elder Zo's hands after they left the inheritance prison. As for the people who were recruited, they would not be able to leave alive. What a good plan. It was estimated that these people who were recruited did not know the rules of the inheritance prison at all, so they were still dreaming of finding treasures. At this moment, the 3 blood-red words Prison of Heritage suddenly turned into a blood-red skeleton and said in a gloomy voice, Are you willing to enter the Prison of Heritage to receive the heritage? Elder Zo hurriedly knelt down. The others also knelt down when they saw the situation. Hei Shinjo had no choice but to kneel on the ground unwillingly. The guy could not help but curse in his heart. Ever since he came to the ghost domain, he had learned how to kneel instead of learning anything else. It was so annoying that he had to kneel down whenever he had nothing to do. At this moment, Elder Zo said, I'm willing to enter the inheritance prison to receive the inheritance. The others quickly repeated the same thing. Hei Shinjo was afraid that she would not be able to enter if she did not say the same thing, so she repeated the same thing. The blood-red skeleton laughed evilly. Yun Chujo could not help but curse in her heart when she saw that it was trembling so much that it was about to fall apart. Was it not afraid that it would fall apart if it laughed? Was it crazy? The blood-red skeleton suddenly stopped laughing and asked in a sinister manner, Which one of you is scolding me? Although Yun Chuji's expression was normal, she was shocked in her heart. Could this thing even read minds? Why not try praising it? Hence, this fellow muttered in his heart. What a beautiful skeleton. What a mighty and domineering skeleton. He had never seen such a high-end and high-class skeleton. It was truly a blessing in 3 lifetimes. Thank you for 8 generations of ancestors. Chapter 4383, Skull and Bones. Yun Chujo was chanting in her heart when she saw the blood-red skull start laughing again. It was laughing so hard that it was shaking. Yes, its bones were shaking. After laughing for a long time, the blood-red skull finally said, Forget it. Since there's someone here who can speak, I won't pursue the matter any further. All of you can go in. Seeing this, Yun Chujo knew that the bloody skeleton was most likely able to read people's minds. She was afraid that the bloody hole would read their minds again. Therefore, she did not want her mind to go blank so as to avoid any unnecessary complications. A blinding red light flashed. When everyone regained their sight, their faces were filled with shock. The place where they were now was like a purgatory. On the walls on both sides, there were countless black ghosts struggling and screaming on the walls above their heads. Not far away from them, there was a boiling pot of oil and a mountain of swords. What surprised them the most was that there were countless red skulls floating in the air. Was this the inheritance hell? This was simply hell. The voice of the red skeleton from before sounded again. Do you see those skulls? You need to get at least 10 skulls before you can enter the next level. Let's start now. When everyone heard the red skeleton's words, they did not quite understand what it meant. What did it mean to get at least 10 skulls? There were so many skulls floating in the air, couldn't they just get 10? Elder Zou's eyes flashed, and then he said, "Everyone, after entering the treasure mountain, there is naturally no reason to return empty-handed. There is no need to be polite. Let's do it." When everyone heard this, they were immediately eager to give it a try. The short and fat man's small eyes also flashed with light, but unfortunately, he immediately became obedient after being stared at by Yun Chujia's cold gaze. Some people couldn't wait to jump up and catch the floating skull. However, when their hands were about to touch the skull, a bone-piercing cold air attacked them and took advantage of the moment when they were in a daze. The skull suddenly escaped. Even so, there was still one person who took the risk of getting frostbite on his arm and caught a skull. That person hugged the skull and laughed loudly. Everyone gathered around and looked enviously at that person. The short and fat man also wanted to move forward. However, he stopped after being glared at by Yun Chujio. Elder Zou smiled and said, "Congratulations to this little brother. Once you inject your essence energy into it, the things inside will naturally be released." That person immediately injected a trace of essence energy excitedly. Light flickered on the skull, and then that person disappeared on the spot. Just as everyone was puzzled, they heard a miserable cry coming from the oil pot in the distance. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and saw that that person had already been thrown into the oil pot. Within a few breaths, there was already no sound. The short fatty almost sat on the ground. Fortunately, he listened to Little Nine. Otherwise, wouldn't he have been thrown into the oil pot as well? It was too terrifying. The other people's faces were also filled with fear. The people who were originally eager to try were suddenly stunned on the spot. Those floating skulls in the air were originally secret manuals and yuan tools in their eyes, but now, they were the Yama who wanted to take their lives. At this moment, the red skeleton laughed strangely and said, "Snatch? Why aren't you snatching anymore? I love to see all of you lively. I'll give you 1 hour. If you can't get 10 skeletons, you'll all become vengeful spirits here." Elder Zou frowned and said to everyone, "Everyone, wealth comes from danger. There are risks in this skull, but there are also opportunities. This is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Don't miss it." Chapter 4384 The best voice in the ghost realm. After Elder Zou finished speaking, no one moved. It was true that wealth came from danger, but no matter how one looked at this inheritance prison, there was only danger and no wealth. Elder Zou thought of the red skeleton talking for an hour and his face darkened. He said, "Everyone, you heard it too. If no one takes the skull within an hour, we will all die here. We have already taken 1 skull. 9 more people must take the skull. In that case, the 9 of you will do it." Elder Zou pointed at the 9 people. The 9 people's faces instantly turned pale as they begged for mercy. Elder Zou naturally did not pay attention to them. Seeing that they still did not move, Elder Zou gave them a look. Immediately, a few hunters from the Divine Dragon hunting group killed one of them on the spot. The remaining 8 people did not dare to say anything more. If they went to take the skulls, there was still a chance of survival. If they did not take the skulls, they could only be beheaded. Elder Zou casually pointed at another unlucky person. He gathered 9 people and let them grab the skulls. 10 people took the risk of their arms being frozen and took 9 skulls down. Everyone had learned from the previous experience. This time, they hid far away for fear of being implicated. Elder Zou asked everyone to scatter and let those people open the skulls in their hands one by one. After the first unlucky person injected elemental energy into the skull, he was blasted into fine powder. The second unlucky person was directly thrown onto the mountain of blades and was instantly pierced into a sieve. The third unlucky person's body instantly turned into blood. Very quickly, it was the last person. The clothes on that person's body had already been soaked in cold sweat. His body was trembling non-stop as he fearfully injected elemental energy into his skull. However, nothing dangerous happened. On the contrary, a low-grade heaven-grade treasure sword appeared in his hand. That person was stunned at first, then laughed loudly. He laughed so hard that tears were flowing out. Clearly, he had received too much stimulation. Elder Zou's gaze lingered on the sword for a moment, then, he said, "Everyone, did you see that? Although it was dangerous, if one's luck was good enough, the harvest would be quite bountiful. Moreover, there were so many skulls floating in the air. Whether it was a disaster or an opportunity depended on one's luck. Those who had been recruited would not believe Elder Zou's words no matter how stupid they were. They just did not dare to resist." At this moment, the red skeleton's voice sounded again. "TSK TSK, I love to see you guys killing each other and scheming against each other. Humans are indeed the most insidious and shameless species." Yun Chujo could not help but curse in her heart. These words sounded as if it was very noble. Pooey, shameless. This fellow also knew that it was probably a bad thing after thinking it through. As expected, the red skeleton said sinisterly, "Who was scolding me just now? Hurry up and hand over the person who scolded me. Otherwise, none of you will be able to leave." Everyone looked at each other. Who knew who was scolding it? And who was so free to scold it for no reason? Was there something wrong with it? Yun Chujo could only repeat the same trick in her heart. The voice of Lord Skeleton was really too pleasant to hear. It was simply the best voice in the ghost realm. To be able to hear its voice, her life had not been in vain. The red skeleton laughed once again, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. Forget it, forget it. I have to say, although there are some of you who are shameless enough to secretly curse at me, there are also some who are very good at talking. I will spare you one more time. If I hear anyone secretly cursing at me again, I will kill all of you. Chapter 4385, Group Fight. Hei Shinjo did not even dare to think about it now. Otherwise, this fellow would definitely have very complicated thoughts, because she was the one who was shameless and the one who knew how to talk. At this moment, a red light suddenly appeared. When everyone regained their sight, they could not help but exclaim in surprise. They seemed to be in a wilderness at this moment. The ground was filled with white bones. In the distance, they could vaguely see a blood-red river, which made people shudder. Similar to the first place, there were countless skulls floating less than 10 feet away from the ground. The sinister voice of the red skeleton sounded again. "As usual, you can enter the next level by choosing 10 skulls. Otherwise, you can stay here and keep company with the white bones." This time, Elder Zou was too lazy to say anything. He pointed at 10 people and one of them shouted, "Are you just going to watch? If you don't resist, we will all die." Before that person could finish his words, he was killed by the members of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group. Elder Zou said sinisterly, "If anyone dares to resist, he will be your end." Everyone immediately fell silent. This was because everyone had the mentality of following the crowd and being lucky. In any case, there were still 200 or 300 people. They might not be unlucky enough to be chosen. In that case, why take the risk? Yun Chujo had also seen through everyone's thoughts, so she did not do anything. There was no rush. She would wait and see first. The people on the second level were slightly luckier than those on the first level. 2 of them obtained 2 bottles of high-grade medicinal pills, while the rest were thrown into the Red River and instantly turned into blood. Yun Chujo felt that the name of this inheritance prison was really appropriate. Wasn't it hell? Soon, everyone arrived at the 5th level of the Prison of Legacy. At this time, more than 30 people had died because of the skulls. Yun Chujo felt that the time was right. Otherwise, if they continued to die, even if she succeeded in instigating them, the people who were recruited would definitely not be able to defeat Elder Zou and the others. Therefore, after the red skeleton repeated the rules, Yun Chujo said with a smile, the best voice in the ghost realm. Can I ask you a question? Everyone was dumbfounded. What the hell? The number one voice of the ghost realm? This ugly freak must have been scared crazy, right? A hunter from the Divine Dragon hunting group said with disdain, "What nonsense are you talking about? What kind of good voice and bad voice are you talking about? I think you are sick in the head. Elder Zoe, let these three good-for-nothings take the skulls this round." As soon as that person's words fell, his body instantly turned into blood. The red skeleton said with a sinister tone, "The number one voice of the ghost realm is me. You actually dare to question me? You are courting death." Everyone was stunned by this unexpected turn of events. This red skeleton was the number one voice in the ghost realm? What did this have to do with anything? Furthermore, how did this ugly freak know that the red skeleton was the number one voice in the ghost realm? Originally, the short fatty was trembling like a quail because he had been chosen. Now that he saw that the person had been taken care of by the red skeleton, he could not help but feel a glimmer of hope. At this moment, the red skeleton said again, "What question do you want to ask? Seeing that you know how to talk, I can consider answering you. May I ask how many levels are there in this inheritance prison?" Yun Chujo asked with a smile. "The 18th level. If you want to go out, you have to take 10 skulls from each level. Only then can you reach the 18th level." The red skeleton did not continue speaking. Obviously, the 18th floor was different from the previous 17 floors. Yun Chujo nodded, she blinked and said, "Lord Skeleton, you are the most high-class person in the world. Don't you like to be lively and lively? How about I let them fight in a group to show you? However, you have to extend the stay time on this floor to 4 hours. Chapter 4386, Free-for-all. The red skeleton immediately said with great interest, TSK, although this woman looks a lot uglier than me, she's very interesting." "You're right." Yun Chujo was just about to complain about the red skeleton's shamelessness, but when she remembered that the red skeleton could read minds, she immediately muttered in her heart, "Lord Skeleton's skills are unrivaled, Lord Skeleton is unrivaled in the world." The red skeleton had just captured some information when it was attracted by Yun Chuji's last words. It immediately forgot about what it had said earlier. Elder Zoe did not know what Yun Chujo was up to, and he was afraid that the red skeleton would attack, so he did not dare to act rashly. He only stared at Yun Chujo with a malicious gaze. Tu Ziji's entire body tensed up, afraid that Elder Zoe would suddenly attack. Although little Joe's physique was abnormal, it was best not to reveal it. Even the short and fat man who was previously trembling had changed his appearance. He carried a large knife and stood in front of Yun Chujo. Tu Ziji could not help but have a change of opinion towards the short and fat man. Although this short and fat man was a good-for-nothing and a little timid, he was still able to handle critical moments. At this moment, the three of them had become the focal point of the entire scene. Everyone's inquisitive gazes fell on Yun Chujo. What did she mean by fighting in a group? Yun Chujo coughed twice, then, she said, "Everyone, you've heard and seen it. There are a total of 18 levels of the inheritance prison here. Each level requires 10 people to be sent to their deaths. If we calculate it to the end, I'm afraid there won't be many people left that we've recruited. As for the remaining people, do you think Elder Zoe and the Divine Dragon hunting group will allow you to leave the Ghost Abyss alive even if you leave this inheritance prison? Therefore, if you want to live, you can only turn the tables and kill them. Otherwise, none of us will be able to live." In fact, Yun Chujo did not need to say it. When the red skeleton said that there were 18 levels here, those who were recruited had the intention to resist. People would only resist when they were forced into a dead end. Previously, they still had the thought of being lucky, but now, they had completely lost it. Elder Zoe sneered, "Nonsense. This old man can guarantee that as long as a person can walk out of the inheritance prison alive, this old man will definitely not hurt him in the slightest." Yun Chujo curled her lips, "You talk like you're farting. What's the use of not making promises? If you want to live, then come with me. As Yun Chujo said this, she raised a large brick and rushed towards a hunter. The short fatty and 2ZG were speechless. Little Jill was good at everything, but she was too impulsive. How would they know that Yun Chujo was doing this for the sake of those who had been recruited? If no one took the lead, those people would definitely hesitate, and there would really be no way for them to survive. As expected, when those people saw Yun Chujo charging up first, and when they thought of the people who had died tragically before, they immediately charged towards the people from the Divine Dragon Hunting Group. Elder Zoe saw that things had already come to this point, so there was nothing more to say. It was just a matter of who would win. The person he wanted to die the most right now was naturally Hei Shinjo. Hence, he rushed towards Yun Chujo. However, before he could reach Yun Chujo, he was stopped by 2ZG. Elder Zoe snorted coldly, overestimating yourself. However, after the two of them exchanged blows, Elder Zoe cried out in surprise, You hid Origin Energy? You're also a member of the Imperial Region? Hearing him say this, 2ZG knew that he was most likely a member of the Imperial Hunting Squad. He did not waste time with him and intensified his offensive. Elder Zoe said viciously, Even if you are from the Imperial region, you are still not my match. You are courting death. The moment they exchanged blows, 2ZG knew that his elemental energy was not as powerful as Elder Zoe's. He reckoned that Elder Zoe's level in the Royal Hunting Squad was not low. As time passed, 2ZG gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Chapter 4387 Money or Death. On the other side, Yun Chujo relied on her large brick and a belly full of evil water. This fellow worked hard to kill a hunter with the short and fat man in the beginning, and then commanded from behind. Although the people who were recruited were dissatisfied, they didn't have the time to pay attention to her. Moreover, they didn't know what the relationship between Jin Meili and the Red Skeleton was. What if they offended her and were turned into blood by the Red Skeleton? Moreover, they found that Yun Chuji's instructions seemed to be good, so they gradually listened to her commands. Seeing that 2ZG was about to suffer a loss, this guy immediately swung a big brick and went forward to help. This guy helped 2ZG kill Elder Zoe at the price of a bloody hole in his body. Then, he naturally kept Elder Zoe's storage ring. With Elder Zoe's death, the remaining members of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group were much easier to deal with. If it wasn't for Yun Chuji's meddling, those who were recruited would definitely submit to her and not dare to resist. In the end, even if they wanted to resist, since more than half of them were already dead, they wouldn't be a match for Elder Zoe and the others. It could only be said that Elder Zoe and the others met Yun Chujo. They were unlucky. Yes, they were unlucky. Yun Chujo did not leave any survivors. This place was already very dangerous. It was not safe to leave another dangerous factor around. The short and fat man asked, Little Joe, why didn't you leave their dog lives to use to pluck the skulls? Yun Chujo smiled lightly and said, Do you think that they would listen to orders when they knew that they would definitely die? To take a step back, if they really did pluck the skulls, what would they do if they risked their lives to rush into the crowd? The short and fat man shrunk his neck. With his IQ, it was better for him to speak less in the future. Some of the people who were recruited were also killed or injured. However, compared to the complete annihilation of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group, it was obviously much better. They looked at each other and did not know what to do next. The Red Skeleton laughed strangely, Wonderful. Wonderful. You little girl, you are full of evil tricks. Interesting. However, you still have an hour left. TSK, I am really looking forward to your next performance. Why don't you guys have another fight? The loser will go and pluck the skulls. When everyone heard the Red Skeleton's words, they immediately became wary of each other. No one wanted to die, and the chances of obtaining good things from the skulls were too low. It was basically no different from sending themselves to their deaths. Although many people knew that no one would survive in this stalemate, what could they do? At worst, they would all die here together. Just as everyone was feeling a little hopeless, Yun Chujo said lightly, "Help me remove 10 skulls. I'll inject elemental energy." Those people simply felt that there was something wrong with their ears. Could this Jin Meili be an idiot? Who would send themselves to their death? Besides, unless she was lucky enough to draw a precious skull, how could she last until the 10th? Yun Chujo glanced at the crowd. She said righteously, "I'm the softest and kindest person. Isn't it a glorious thing to sacrifice me and make everyone happy? Come on, hurry up, or we won't have enough time." Although everyone felt that Yun Chujo was very abnormal, they could only try their best now. Very quickly, someone with slightly higher elemental energy removed 10 skulls and placed them in front of Yun Chujo. Yun Chujo glanced at them, then, she said, "Let's get this straight. If I draw something good, you guys aren't allowed to have red eye syndrome. It's all mine." The short fatty was so angry that he wanted to strangle her to death. At this time, she was still a money grubber. You fucking want money but don't want your life. Chapter 4388, Smashing Golden Eggs. The rest of the people also looked at Yun Chujo with a stiff expression. Money grubber to such an extent, they had to admit defeat. They had to admit defeat. Before everyone could make their stand, the red skeleton's sinister voice rang out, "Little girl, you really want money but not your life. At first, I thought you were smart, but now I can see that you are an idiot." Although Yun Chujo had 100 ways to kill the red skeleton, she still had not figured out its background, so it was better not to offend it. Thus, she smiled and said, "Lord Skeleton, I am an idiot when I compare myself to you. You are not only the best voice in the ghost realm, but also the smartest person in the ghost realm." The red skeleton felt that these words sounded very comfortable. However, no matter how comfortable it was, she would still die, unless the 10 bones were all good things. However, this was impossible because there were only 5 good things in each layer. The rest were all killer moves. Seeing that the red skeleton did not speak, Yun Chujo looked at the crowd. "You guys haven't answered me yet. If there are good things in here, will all of them belong to me?" Although the crowd did not know what this guy was planning, they still said, "Of course. No matter what is in there, it will belong to you." Yun Chujo nodded. "How about this? I'll be a good person until the end. I'll cover all the layers below. You're not allowed to fight with me. Whoever doesn't keep his word will be an asshole. Everyone, you haven't finished your layer yet, and you want to cover all the layers below? Maybe the first skull will kill you." However, seeing that there was not much time left, the others quickly said, Yes, it's all yours. We won't fight with you. Hurry up. It's too late. No rush, no rush. There's one more thing. If I can bring you out of the inheritance prison and ghost abyss safely, you have to call me Little Ninth Leader in the future and listen to my arrangements. Otherwise, I won't care whether you live or die. Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes and said. Those people only wanted to live. They would even kneel down and call her grandma, let alone listen to her orders. Seeing that they had all agreed, Yun Chujo picked up a skull and walked to the side. Tu Ziji did not know what Yun Chujo planned to do. Could it be that she wanted to expose her abnormal constitution that could change at will? This might cause big trouble. However, there seemed to be no other way now. How about killing all these people to silence them when they went out? Just as Tu Ziji was thinking about it, he saw Yun Chujo place the skull on the ground. However, she did not inject any elemental energy into it. Instead, she hopped back. Tu Ziji was dumbfounded. What did she mean? Did she regret it? Just as Tu Ziji and the others were puzzled, they saw Yun Chujo throw a vine talisman at the skull. The vine talisman instantly turned into a vine and coiled tightly around the skull. When the skull felt the elemental energy attack from the vine, it shattered with a loud bang, and the vine disappeared without a trace. Yun Chujo snapped her fingers. Done. She wasn't too sure before, but she was just trying her luck. If it succeeded, it would naturally be good. If it didn't, she planned to trick the red skeleton. If not, she would still have a monstrous constitution. As for these people using poison to control it, she wasn't afraid of them talking nonsense. 2ZG and the others were dumbfounded. How could this be possible? Yun Chujo ignored them. Like a hard-working bee, she activated the remaining skulls separately. She was quite lucky and obtained a bottle of high-grade medicinal pills. The reason why this fellow did not activate the skulls at the same time was firstly because he was afraid that the consequences would be too severe. Secondly, he was afraid that the good things would be ruined. Yun Chujo saw that the red skeleton did not say anything and did not send them down to the next level. Hence, she instructed 2ZG to get a few more skulls for her. After all, there were plenty of ghost talismans, so she could continue to play. She would treat it as smashing a golden egg. Chapter 4389, Give Me a Basin. Yun Chujo shattered more than 20 skulls in one go and obtained a low-grade heaven-grade defensive elemental artifact from them. Her eyelashes were almost fluttering with joy as she said to 2ZG, Brother 2, take off those skulls. I'll open them up and have a look. Everyone was dumbfounded. Firstly, they didn't expect that the ghost talismans could activate these skulls. Secondly, they were surprised that Yun Chujo had so many ghost talismans. After all, even after the goatskin scrolls that produce beginner-level ghost talismans were widely sold, only a few people could successfully draw ghost talismans, and the price was not cheap. Why did Jin Meili have so many ghost talismans? 2ZG was about to help Yun Chujo pluck a few more skulls when he heard the red skeleton roar in exasperation, Stop! Stop right now! If you dare to move, I'll turn you into blood. 2ZG did not dare to move carelessly when he heard that. However, he was not particularly worried about the red skeleton turning into blood. This was because he discovered that the reason why the hunter from the Divine Dragon hunting group had turned into blood was not because the red skeleton had some extraordinary means. Instead, it was because a red liquid dripped onto the person's body from the top of his head. However, everyone was too frightened to notice it. Therefore, as long as he was on guard, the red skeleton would not be able to do anything to him. However, in order to avoid complications, it was better to not move at all. The reason why the red skeleton did not say anything for a long time was because it was both shocked and angry. It really did not expect that the inheritance prison's cruel rules would be easily resolved by that ugly freak. It was only to be blamed for setting up the skull back then. It should have been set to be activated with spiritual sense instead of elemental energy. In the beginning, the red skeleton consoled itself. Although that wretched girl had a stomach full of bad ideas, it was impossible for her to have so many ghost talismans, so there was nothing to be afraid of. However, when it saw that Hei Shinjo had activated so many skulls, its claws instantly went numb. If it continued at her speed, very soon, all the skulls in this layer would be destroyed by her. If there were no skulls, how could this inheritance prison be called inheritance prison? The red skeleton said in exasperation, Damn girl, you are cheating. Yun Chujo blinked her eyes and said, Lord Skeleton, how am I cheating? Didn't you say that as long as you remove 10 skulls and activate the skulls, you will pass? The red skeleton was almost disintegrated. Yes, she really did not break the rules. The red skeleton said sinisterly, although you did not break the rules, I don't like you. I will turn you into blood. As the red skeleton spoke, a drop of red liquid dripped from Yun Chujo's upper body. Then, the red skeleton saw Yun Chujo directly swallow the drop of liquid into her mouth. The red skeleton laughed evilly. Damned girl, you're dead meat. You actually swallowed the devouring water. You'll turn into blood soon. Yun Chujo laughed lightly. Lord Skeleton, I've smashed so many skulls just now. I'm really thirsty. How can one drop be enough? Give me a basin. A basin? The red skeleton was so angry that it almost passed out. Did you think that devouring water was a cabbage? No, wait, why didn't she turn into blood? How could she still be alive and kicking to anger him? How was that possible? Yun Chujo said leisurely, Lord Skeleton, by the way, we have been on the 5th floor for a long time. Shouldn't you teleport us to the 6th floor? When I think about how the 6th floor might smash the skull of a good treasure, my hand is very itchy. Chapter 4390, the 18th level of the Inheritance Prison. Yun Chujo had already discovered that the red skeleton was just trying to be mysterious. Other than being able to control the duration of each level, it was just using the water to attack people. As long as it was vigilant enough, it wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, that thing was useless against her. Instead, it was just a small snack for Go Weiba. The red skeleton was clearly extremely angry. Its voice was slightly trembling as it said, You're courting death. TSK, I'm courting death. I've been holding back some of my words for a long time. You have the nerve to call yourself the best voice in the ghost realm just because your voice is like a piece of broken wood? The best male voice is more like it. You have the nerve to call me ugly just because you look like that? Shameless. Shameless. Oh right, didn't you say that someone was secretly scolding you? Let me tell you, that person was me. It's me, it's all me. Are you angry? If you have the ability, come out and fight with me. Hei Shinjo was still brooding over the incident where she was forced to kneel down. Now that she knew that the red skeleton was just bluffing, she naturally would not be bullied by it. The red skeleton choked and fainted from anger. Since it fainted from anger, without its intervention, the Inheritance Prison started operating at the set time. The red skeleton had extended the time limit by 4 hours, so everyone was directly transported to the 10th level of the Inheritance Prison. The situation in the 10th level of the Inheritance Prison was even more terrifying and sinister than the previous 5 levels. However, Hei Shinjo only had those skulls in her eyes now. Fear did not exist at all. This fellow commanded a few people with high elemental energy to pluck 10 skulls before continuing to smash the golden eggs. Everyone's expressions were very subtle. On one hand, they were naturally very happy because there was hope for survival. On the other hand, they felt that Yun Chujo was truly abnormal, to actually have so many ghost talismans. Moreover, after swallowing that droplet of devouring water that could turn a person into blood, nothing actually happened. This was too abnormal. Moreover, she actually dared to argue with that red skeleton. Could it be that she wasn't afraid of the red skeleton taking revenge? How could these people know that Hei Shinjo had fainted from anger? How could they be afraid of a skeleton? After the 10 skulls were activated, everyone was immediately transported to the 11th floor. When the red skeleton came back to its senses, Yun Chujo and the others had already arrived at the 17th floor of the Inheritance Prison. Hei Shinjo was not satisfied with the harvest. Most of the things she obtained were medicinal pills. She still hoped to obtain the Ghost Talisman Inheritance or the Origin Tool. The red skeleton thought to itself, "I'll have a good time when I reach the 18th level. Let's see how she can still jump around." After Yun Chujo smashed 10 skulls, a dazzling red light flashed in front of everyone's eyes. When they regained their sight, everyone was a little dumbfounded. After a long while, the short fatty asked, "Little Joe, where is this place? Are we still in the Inheritance Prison?" It wasn't strange for the short fatty to ask this. The main reason was that the place they were in was like a fairyland. The pavilions were beautiful and magnificent. There was even the faint sound of celestial music. No one would associate this place with the terrifying and gloomy Inheritance Prison. However, everyone knew in their hearts that this must be the 18th level of the Inheritance Prison. This kind of conflict made them very uneasy. They even felt that those exquisite pavilions were transformed from evil spirits and contained great danger. Then, the question was, how could they pass through the 18th floor of the Prison of Heritage? There was obviously no exit here, and there were no rules. Could they only be trapped here forever? Everyone could not help but look at Hei Shinjo. Although they still felt that Yun Chujo was ugly and useless, they still treated her as their backbone. Chapter 4391 was exposed. The corners of Yun Chujia's mouth curled up slightly. Of course we're in the prison of inheritance, but since that bone spirit wants us to experience the life of the fairyland, then let's experience it. Let's go, follow this regiment commander around. Everyone's faces stiffened. Regiment commander? Hadn't they already left the prison of inheritance? She was really thick-skinned enough. Yun Chujio led everyone around before leading them into a palace. The items inside were all very exquisite. Even the stone bricks on the ground were carved with exquisite patterns. Everyone sighed in their hearts. If they didn't know that this was the 18th level of the prison of inheritance, they would really feel that this was a fairyland. Yun Chujio casually sat down on the main seat and said with a smile, "You guys don't have to worry. Well, deal with whatever comes our way. Well, just deal with whatever comes our way. Those little ones, close the palace door so that dangerous things won't come in." Those people who were pointed at hurriedly closed the palace door and even put a bolt on it. After a moment of silence, a middle-aged man said with a worried expression, "Miss Shen, what should we do next? What if it keeps trapping us here?" "Don't worry. It's obvious that the bone spirit is stingy. It can't bear to let the array keep running, so it will definitely make trouble," Yun Chujio said lightly. "I really don't understand why it set up this array. So far, nothing dangerous has happened. Is it just trying to trap us for a few days?" The man continued to ask. Yun Chujio glanced at everyone with a faint smile and said, "Maybe. Are you guys hungry? We are iron, rice and steel. I have meat buns here. Come, don't stand on ceremony." After saying that, Yun Chujio motioned for the short fatty and 2 Ziji to distribute the buns for everyone. Everyone was really hungry. Ever since they entered the inheritance prison, they had been extremely nervous. How could they have time to eat? Therefore, they took the buns and started eating. After eating 2 buns, Yun Chujio said with a smile, "Are the buns delicious?" Everyone nodded. Needless to say, these buns were really delicious. Do you know why they are so delicious? It's because I added some seasonings. Do you feel the pain in your stomachs? In another 15 minutes, you will die from the poison, Yun Chujio said with a smile. Poison? Everyone's expression changed immediately. There was fear, doubt, and resentment. Yun Chujio squinted her eyes to see everyone's reaction. When her gaze fell on one of them, she gave 2 Ziji a look. 2 Ziji immediately flashed and threw a palm at that person. That person was obviously unprepared. 2 Ziji smacked him directly, and he flew out with a thud and crashed into the palace gate. Following that, there was a series of rustling sounds. A pile of bones appeared on the ground. Following that, the red skeleton's exasperated voice could be heard. "Stinky girl, you're playing tricks again." Following the red skeleton's voice, the scene before everyone's eyes changed. It was actually inside a spacious stone hall. Unlike the gloomy and bloody atmosphere on the other 17 floors, there was nothing special here. Everyone was stunned by this change. What was going on? The pile of bones on the ground quickly turned into a red skeleton, just like what they saw outside the main door. The red skeleton said in exasperation, "Stinky girl, how did you see through me?" Chapter 4392 Inheritance Test. Yun Chujio curled up the corners of her mouth and said with a smile, "I've thought about it. You've trapped us in the so-called fairyland, so naturally, you have to do something. What about you, you bone spirit? You're also a pervert who can't stand to see others being good. Maybe you'll pretend to be one of us, then sow discord between us and make us kill each other. That way, you can deal with us and watch a good show. Why not?" Therefore, I pretended to say that the bun was poisonous. If a normal person heard it, they would have a suspicious, frightened, or resentful expression. However, your expression was one of curiosity and schadenfreude. You really did not have the talent to act. In addition, the bone spirit was a bone spirit after all. The way you walked was too stiff. Otherwise, why did you think that I brought everyone so far for no reason? Do you think I have nothing better to do? The red skeleton snorted coldly. I was just careless. Do you think that you can pass through the 18th level of the inheritance prison? Dream on. I was just teasing you before. Soon, you won't be able to laugh anymore. Yun Chuzhou said indifferently, since that's the case, let's begin. The red skeleton saw Yun Chuzhi's calm expression and disappeared in a huff. A moment later, an old voice sounded from inside the stone room, now activate the ghost talisman inheritance and successfully pass the test to become the inheritor. If you fail, kill. Before everyone had time to think carefully, a huge ghost talisman pattern appeared on the stone wall. The old voice sounded again, 10, 9, 8, 2, 1. As soon as the word was spoken, the huge ghost talisman pattern disappeared, and 100 similar-looking ghost talismans appeared on the stone wall. Now, find that ghost talisman from before, 10, 9, everyone's head buzzed. What kind of joke was this? They had only been given 10 seconds to observe, and now they had to pick out one out of 100. How was this possible? Besides, they didn't even realize what was going on just now, let alone remember the details of the ghost talisman. They were really doomed this time. When everyone thought that they were doomed this time, Yun Chuzhou said slowly, second row, fifth from the east. Everyone thought that Yun Chuzhou must have randomly picked one out. However, after thinking about it, since she was going to die anyway, she could pick whichever one she wanted. You passed the first test. Now, let's begin the second test. Everyone was dumbfounded. What the hell? She actually got it right? Wasn't her luck too heaven-defying? She actually got it right by randomly pointing at a random one. Everyone didn't have time to think too much, because a talisman paper, a ghost talisman pen, and a porcelain bottle of dye used to draw the ghost talisman appeared in front of everyone. Draw the ghost talisman just now. The time limit is 15 minutes, the old voice said. Everyone couldn't believe their ears. This was an impossible task. Not to mention that they didn't know how to draw ghost talismans. Even if they did, how could they finish drawing such complicated ghost talismans in 15 minutes? Wasn't this obviously letting them die? Some people planned to risk their lives to draw the ghost talismans on the stone wall, but they did not expect that the hundreds of ghost talismans on the stone wall had disappeared. When the short and fat man saw that Yun Chuzhou was a little stunned, he sighed. Little Joe, are you scared, silly? It seems that we are doomed. Yun Chuzhou came back to her senses and looked at the short and fat man as if he was an idiot. She took out a small square table from her storage ring, spread the talisman paper, and quickly drew it. Chapter 4393, I give up on my inheritance. The short fatty was stunned. Little Joe was not giving up. She wanted to give it a try, right? He shook his head. Although Yun Chuzhou had told him later that she had drawn those ghost talismans herself, they were only beginner-level ghost talismans. There was no way they could compare to the ghost talismans she wanted to draw. Moreover, even if he was an amateur, it was impossible for him to finish drawing such complicated ghost talismans in 15 minutes. It was obvious that he did not want them to live. The short and fat man couldn't help but feel sad. He was going to die before he had a wife and children. He was really unwilling. Just as the short and fat man was thinking about something, he heard Yun Chuzhou mumble, "This thing is indeed not easy to draw." The short and fat man came back to his senses and looked at the small square table. He saw that Yun Chuzhou had put down the ghost talisman pen, and there was a ghost talisman on the table. Yes, a ghost talisman that had been completed. The short and fat man's small eyes were wide open. Why did little Joe draw a similar one to the one on the stone wall? Did she really draw it? Was he dreaming? At this moment, the old voice said, "Time's up." We passed the test successfully. The crowd was dead silent at first, and then they cried with joy, "Oh my God! We passed the test. Jean Meili really drew it successfully. We're saved." We can get out of here alive. Great. We won't be killed. This nightmare is finally coming to an end. The short fatty laughed foolishly with red eyes. Ha, that's great. I'll get a wife when I get out and give birth to a bunch of kids. If I die accidentally, I won't even have a child. Yun Chujia's eyes twitched and she was about to tease the short fatty. The old voice sounded again, you're the only one who passed the test. Do you choose to accept the inheritance, or do you choose to give up the inheritance and leave with the others? Everyone was stunned. What? Zhen Meili was the only one who could leave. Everyone's heart sank. How could their lives be compared to the ghost talisman inheritance in the inheritance prison? Besides, they didn't know each other. If they knew each other, they would definitely choose the ghost talisman inheritance. Although the short fatty felt that Yun Chuzhou wouldn't leave him and Tu Ziji to die, he still said nervously, Little Zhou, you won't leave second brother alone, right? I'm your biological second brother. Look at our looks and our bodies. No one would believe that we're not biological siblings. Yun Chuzhou, at this moment, the old voice asked again, do you choose the inheritance or the lives of these people? I give up the inheritance. I choose to save these people, Yun Chuzhou said slowly and firmly. What? The old voice instantly turned into the voice of a red skeleton. Perhaps it felt that it had been exposed, so it decided not to pretend anymore. It said in disbelief, stupid girl, are you stupid? You have to know that this is the ghost talisman inheritance. You have never heard of many ghost talismans in it. Are you really going to give up? Everyone did not expect Yun Chuzhou to actually choose to save them. For a moment, they could not believe it. Yun Chuzhou nodded. I have already promised them that I would bring them out of the inheritance prison safely. I have to keep my word. Moreover, they will be my subordinates and my brothers in the future. I naturally cannot leave them to die just because of a dead object like the ghost talisman inheritance. Yun Chujia's words were very calm, but everyone had mixed feelings. There was surprise, shame, and gratitude. They decided in their hearts that they would definitely follow by her side and pledge their loyalty to her to the death. Chapter 4394, Gratitude for Saving His Life. There was nothing he could do to repay it. The red skeleton snorted coldly. TSK, what you say is better than what you sing. You will definitely regret giving up such a powerful inheritance. You will regret it for the rest of your life. No, you are wrong. Since I have chosen, I will not regret it. Moreover, I believe that with my ability, even if I do not obtain the so-called inheritance, I can still look down on the world, Yun Chuzhou said proudly. The red skeleton was silent for a moment, then said, You're really arrogant. Since you've already made your choice, they'll send you all out of the inheritance prison. As soon as the red skeleton finished speaking, everyone felt a blinding red light flash before their eyes. When they regained their sight, they were already at the swamp where they had picked the rippling flower earlier. Yun Chuzhou was rather annoyed. She thought to herself, according to the usual routine, she had done such a righteous act. Shouldn't the weapon spirit praise her for sacrificing herself for others and then pass the inheritance to her? They really teleported them out just like that? Fortunately, she remembered some of the hundreds of ghost talismans that appeared on the stone wall. Otherwise, she would have suffered a great loss. Just as this guy was thinking about something, everyone said in unison, Miss Zhen, we can't repay you for saving our lives. From now on, we will be at your disposal and will do anything you ask of us. Yun Chuzhou waved her hand pretentiously and said something magnificent, but she was cursing in her heart. She was shocked when she heard, we can't repay you for saving our lives. She thought that these people were going to give themselves to her. The short and fat man thought of how these people had mocked and despised the three of them before, but now they were obedient like obedient grandsons. He felt very comfortable and happy. Tu Ziji was much calmer than him. He called Yun Chuzhou to the side and asked, Little Zhou, now that Elder Zhou and the people from the Divine Dragon Hunting Group are dead, how can we let the people above hang the rope? The corners of Yun Chujia's mouth curled up. This is easy. We can just find a reason to deceive them. After all, it's impossible for them to guess that we killed Elder Zhou and the others. Tu Ziji thought of Yun Chujia's evil schemes and felt that it was not a difficult matter. He then said, even if we can safely leave the Ghost Abyss, the Divine Dragon Hunting Group will not let us go. What should we do next? Return to the base domain? Of course we can't return to the base domain. We have a better place to go. Although the Divine Dragon Hunting Group is powerful, doesn't it still have the Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group? If we give the remaining rippling flower to the leader of the Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group to seek protection, they will definitely agree. After all, they don't know Elder Zhou's identity. Yun Chujiu had already planned this move. The strength of the Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group and the Divine Dragon Hunting Group were on par. They wouldn't be happy to use the rippling flower to curry favor with Princess Mei Yan. Moreover, although these people were a little weak, they weren't particularly weak. The Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group couldn't ask for less salary. After Yun Chujiu returned to the team, she told everyone about her fabricated story and plan. Those people now obeyed Yun Chujiu's orders, so they naturally had no objections. When they approached the exit, Yun Chujiu told everyone to wait on the spot while she and Tu Ziji swaggered to the bottom of the exit. When they reached the place, Yun Chujiu pulled her neck and shouted, "People on top, lower the rope." The people on the cliff saw Yun Chujiu and the others and were very puzzled. They asked suspiciously, "Where are Elder Zhou and the people of our Divine Dragon Hunting Group? Why are there only the two of you?" Chapter 4395, Squad 9, Elder Zhou and the others discovered a huge secret in the Ghost Abyss. They can't leave for the time being, but they're afraid of delaying the delivery of the rippling flower to Princess Mei Yan. So, they asked us to send the rippling flower over and let you guys send it back to the Divine Dragon Hunting Group first. Yun Chujiu stared with wide eyes and lied. The people above were a little suspicious and asked, "Even if what you said is true, why didn't you send our Divine Dragon Hunting Group members and send the two of you instead? The Divine Dragon Hunting Group has something important to do. As for why they chose the two of us, it's because we have the lowest elemental energy. Even if we have some ulterior motives, we won't be able to stir up any waves," Yun Chujiu said with a hint of self-mockery. "Oh right, Elder Zhou was afraid that you wouldn't believe me, so he specially gave me his identity jade token." Yun Chujiu took out Elder Zhou's jade token and shook it. The people on top had already believed her by 80%. Moreover, these two good-for-nothings were no match for them no matter what they wanted to do. Immediately, they lowered the rope and pulled Yun Chujiu and Tu Ziji up. "Hand over the rippling flower to us," one of them said. Yun Chujiu and Tu Ziji looked at each other and immediately attacked one person at the same time. That person was completely defenseless and instantly forced his life. The remaining few people reacted and were extremely shocked and furious. Both sides engaged in a battle. Tu Ziji's origin energy was superb, and in addition to He Xinjia's abnormal state, those few people were no match for them. In an instant, they became a few corpses. Yun Chujiu kept their storage rings and threw their corpses into the Ghost Abyss. Only then did she lower the rope and pull the remaining people up. Yun Chujiu did not return to Yen City where the Divine Dragon Hunting Group was. Instead, she brought them directly to Cold City where the Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group was. Yun Chujiu thought that from the names of these two cities, it could be seen that these two hunting groups were not on good terms. Yun Chujiu went through a lot of trouble and finally met the leader of the Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group, Zhong Jie. Yun Chujiu told him the story that she made up. "Leader Zhong, you don't know that Elder Zhou is not human. In order to pick the rippling flower, he used us recruits as bait. Many of us were eaten by the armored ghost crocodiles. We had no choice but to put up a fight. Although our elemental energy was inferior to theirs, we had more people. Although we suffered a lot of casualties, fortunately, we killed Elder Zhou and his lackeys in the end. However, in this way, the Divine Dragon Hunting Group won't spare us. We can only come and beg for your protection." In order to express our gratitude, we are willing to give you the rippling flower and Elder Zoe's storage ring that we picked. In addition, we can only receive half of our salary, and we only hope to have a chance to live. Commander Zhong naturally knew that the Divine Dragon Hunting Group was going to pick the rippling flower. He wanted to send someone to go, but Ghost Abyss was within the Divine Dragon Hunting Group's sphere of influence, so after weighing the pros and cons, he gave up. He did not expect the pie to come to his doorstep. A blessed person really did not need to be busy. As for protecting these people, it was not a problem. After all, they were mortal enemies with the Divine Dragon Hunting Group, so it was not a big deal. Moreover, these people only wanted half of the salary. They could just arrange to do some hard work. Why not? Captain Zhong thought of this and readily agreed. After taking the rippling flower and old Zoe's storage rings, he said, "How about this? Our Heavenly Phoenix hunting group already has 8 teams. You guys can form a 9th team alone." Yun Chujo gratefully expressed her gratitude and heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. No matter what, it could be considered to be stable for the time being. However, in the following period of time, the 9th squad did not have an easy time. The reason was very simple. They came later, and their elemental energy was weaker than the other squads. Naturally, they were ostracized and bullied. What was assigned to them was all dirty and tiring work. It was work that the other 8 squads were not willing to do. After a long period of time, even though the subordinates did not say anything in front of Yun Chujo, they were all dejected and listless as if they could not afford to live. Chapter 4396. It was easy to fish in troubled waters. Other people did not dare to complain, but the short and fat man did not have so many scruples. "Little Joe, what do you think we are after? In the lowly domain, in the Thunderbolt Corps, who the fuck would dare to torture us like this? This bunch of grandsons are really good. The tasks assigned to us are all picked by others, and none of them are decent tasks." The short and fat man said angrily. Yun Chujo burst into laughter. "Second brother, although the current days are a little terrible, aren't they much better than when we were in the Thorn Forest? At that time, didn't we also come over for our next meal? How can we get used to the good days? We can't stand the slightest bit of unhappiness." The short and fat man was choked by Yun Chuji's rebuke. He straightened his neck and said, "That's different. Although we didn't eat well in Thorn Forest, other than when the First Division was collecting the human head fee, we were usually free and unfettered. How is it like now? We were bullied like grandsons every day." Yun Chujo picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. She smiled as she listened to the short and fat man's complaints. Tu Ziji, who was at the side, could not help but feel puzzled. This little pervert had a temper that could not be taken advantage of. Why did she swallow her anger this time? This did not seem like her style of doing things. Could it be that she was holding back some bad water? The short and fat man talked for a long time, and when he saw that Yun Chujo did not reply, he could not help but feel a little embarrassed. After talking for a long time, he was also thirsty. He sat on the chair in a huff and picked up the teacup to drink it in one gulp. Only then did Yun Chujo smile and say, "Second brother, if you cannot bear it, then you will mess up the big plan. Our 9th team is still young and new, so naturally, we cannot be too ostentatious. Furthermore, the group of people I took in had just escaped death in the Ghost Abyss, so they were naturally grateful to me. However, it was just a moment of hot blood. Therefore, we can use this opportunity to temper their temperaments and also to identify if there are any bad apples among them." The short and fat man was stunned for a moment, then he slapped his thigh and said, "I told you. Little Joe, you've never been taken advantage of like this. So you have other plans. Then tell second brother, when do you plan to take care of those people who bullied us? There's no rush. First, use medicinal herbs to recuperate the people below. Wait until their elemental energy levels have increased a little before waiting for an opportunity to take action," Yun Chujo said unhurriedly. If one wanted to defeat the strong with the weak, one had to plan before taking action. In the following period of time, Yun Chuzhou added medicinal herbs into her subordinates' meals. Moreover, the level of medicinal herbs in the level domain was much higher than those in the base domain, and the effects were better. Moreover, Yun Chuzhou took the opportunity to eliminate a few subordinates who had 2 hearts. From then on, the 9th squad was as solid as iron, and outsiders were unable to pry into any information that they did not want to leak. He Xinjiu felt that the time was almost right. Next, it was time to develop allies. However, even though this fellow was already at the 7th level of Yuanhua realm, he was still the weakest among the squad leaders of the Heavenly Emperor hunting squad. The others were mostly at the 4th level of Yuanzuan realm. Because He Xinjiu had the lowest elemental energy and was an ugly woman, none of the 8 of them were close to her. Usually, they would mock and ridicule her during meetings. However, this was not a problem for He Xinjiu. It was easy to fish in troubled waters and stir them up. As a result, the 8 squad leaders were unlucky. Either this and that got into a fight, or that got into a fight with this. The reason for their fight was all because of He Xinjiu. This guy would turn into one of them to provoke the other guy for no reason. When the other guy went to settle the score, the other guy would naturally deny it, and they would disagree with each other. The end result would be a dog biting a dog's fur. Every time this happened, He Xinjiu would stand firmly on the side of the wronged party. That person felt that everyone in the world had abandoned him, but Yun Chuzhou trusted him at this time. She suddenly felt that Jin Meili was actually passable. Half a month later, 4 of He Xinjiu's 8 team leaders successfully hooked up. Of course, she didn't choose them randomly. She felt that these 4 were better than the other 4. Moreover, there was another important reason. Commander Zhong favored the other 4. During this period, something else happened. For some reason, Princess Mei Yan's wedding was postponed to next year. Commander Zhong had no choice but to cancel his trip to the Imperial region to curry favor with her. Yun Chujia's heart stirred when she heard this news. If the wedding was postponed to next year, then it would be best for her to control the Heavenly Phoenix hunting group before then. It would be best if she could also control the Divine Dragon hunting group in her hands. This way, she could use the introduction of the rippling flower to enter the Imperial region and then wait for an opportunity to make a move. Logically speaking, the difficulty of succeeding in this matter was extremely high. However, Yun Chuzhou discovered that the 4 squad leaders were very dissatisfied with Commander Zhong through her private contact with them. Regiment Commander Zhong was a greedy and petty person. Hence, the 4 of them grumbled a lot in private. Yun Chuzhou made use of this point. Whenever she had nothing to do, she would instill some opinions in front of them. For example, if she did not erupt in silence, she would die in silence. Another example was that the Marquis General Xiang Ning had the guts to blah 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 blah. After saying it a few times, these people had some ideas. That's right. Regiment Commander Zhong was merely 1 level higher than them in terms of elemental energy. Why did he have to order them around? What right did they have to suffer his cowardice? Yun Chuzhou was very satisfied with the results of her labor. However, there was a crucial problem now. Her elemental energy was too low. Even if these 4 people instigated a rebellion, they would still not listen to her. Although she could control them with poison and let 2 ZG deal with them, it was best to make them accept it wholeheartedly. Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu the jade slip she obtained last time had long been used up by her. The main reason was that she had to raise 4 foodies, Big Brick, Go Weiba, Great Void Mirror, and Black Bead. It would be a ghost if her cultivation speed could go up. On this day, Regiment Commander Zhong sent someone to call Yun Chuzhou over. When Yun Chuzhou arrived, she discovered that there was still an old man with triangular eyes in the room. San Jiaoyan. Yun Chuzhou was puzzled. This man was not from the Heavenly Phoenix hunting group. Who was he? Why was Commander Zhong looking for her? Moreover, Commander Zhong seemed to be very happy. After Yun Chuzhou greeted him, Commander Zhong introduced, Commander Zhen, this is Senior Meng from the Imperial region. Senior Meng, this is the Commander Zhen from the 9th Squad that I told you about. Yun Chuzhou was even more puzzled. He was from the Imperial region. Occasionally, people from the Imperial region would come over to do business. Could this person be doing business? However, if he was doing business, why did he come to the Heavenly Phoenix hunting squad? San Jiaoyan smiled and said, "What, senior? I'm just an errand boy for the boss. You can call me Manager Meng." Yun Chuzhou said a few polite words and then took her seat. Captain Zhong said with a smile, "Captain Zhen, Manager Meng has been asked by their manager to hunt a few live iron-armored ghost crocodiles. But because he has never been to Ghost Abyss, he wants to hire people from our Primordial Phoenix hunting group to help lead the way. I think you've been there last time, so you're the best candidate. What do you think?" When Yun Chuzhou heard this, she said with some doubt, "Regiment Commander, the Ghost Abyss is in the territory of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group. Why didn't Manager Meng entrust the people of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group to him? Why did he look for our Heavenly Phoenix Hunting Group instead?" Manager Meng said with some embarrassment. This old man interjected. "It's not that this old man wants to go further, but it's just that this old man and the Divine Dragon Hunting Group have been unhappy in the past. That's why I came to your group for help this time." Yun Chuzhou didn't show it on her face, but she was secretly wondering if this Manager Meng was a member of the Royal Hunting Group. That old Zhou was dead, so Manager Meng's purpose should be to ask her for clues, or to find the jade token that old Zhou used to open the prison of inheritance. Although Yun Chuzhou gave old Zhou's ring to Captain Zhong, this guy had put away the good things and some important things in advance. The jade token that could open the prison of inheritance was also in her storage ring. Captain Zhong saw that Yun Chuzhou didn't say anything and said unhappily, "Captain Zhen, I was the one who gave you protection when you were cornered. Why are you so stubborn now and don't listen to my arrangements?" Yun Chuzhou quickly stood up. She said fearfully, "Captain, I will never forget your great kindness to me. It's not that I don't listen to your arrangements. It's just that the Divine Dragon Hunting Group hates me to death and Gue Yuan is within their sphere of influence. I'm worried that they will ambush people near Gue Yuan. Don't worry about that. I've been looking for trouble recently, attracting the attention of the Divine Dragon Hunting Group to other places. As long as you guys are careful, there won't be any problems." P Alpha and D Alpha No 10 He had received quite a lot of benefits from Manager Meng, so he couldn't be bothered with whether Yun Chuzhou was dead or alive. After all, earning money was the real deal. Seeing this, Yun Chuzhou could only say, "Then can I bring a companion with me? There are some things that I can't remember clearly, and he can also give me advice." "Of course, you can go back and prepare. Tomorrow morning, you can set off with Manager Meng," Commander Zhong said. Yun Chuzhou nodded, then turned around and left. Rho Alpha D Alpha Nu Om. After Yun Chuzhou returned to her residence, she found Short Fatty and 2ZG and told them about the matter. "Little Jiu, it's obvious that he doesn't have good intentions. He must be looking for us to interrogate Elder Zhou and the inheritance prison. Why don't we run? Let's go back to the base area," the Short Fatty said loudly. Yun Chuzhou shook her head. "Since that Manager Meng came looking for us, he must have arranged people around us. We won't be able to escape. Besides, escaping isn't a solution. How about this? Big Brother 2 and I will go with them. Second brother, you stay here and wait for us to come back." Seeing Yun Chuzhou's resolute attitude, the short and fat man could only agree. The next morning, Yun Chuzhou brought 2ZG and Manager Meng to meet up. Manager Meng brought over a dozen people. It seemed that their elemental energy was not low. It was unknown if they were all people from the Imperial region. Manager Meng politely exchanged a few words before everyone set off. The journey was very smooth. Manager Meng's attitude had always been good. However, 2ZG found an opportunity to speak to Yun Chuzhou. "Little Jiu, these people are definitely from the Royal Hunting Group, because I've seen one of Manager Meng's subordinates in the Royal Hunting Group, but he didn't recognize me." Speaking up to this point, 2ZG couldn't help but touch his bald ladle. It was really a bitter tear. Yun Chujo wasn't too surprised, because she had long guessed that these people were most likely from the Royal Hunting Group. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.